Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis, and joining me, as he always does, is my co-host, the esports historian, Duncan Thorne-Shields. Sammy B is pressing the buttons, and we're going to talk about Counter-Strike. Although, I will say it's a classic filler episode, slow news week. We're in the middle of a tournament because ESL decided to have sort of some insane break between the phases on IEM Winter. Let's talk about some Counter-Strike, I guess.
Yes.
Yes, he says. Where would you like to begin? With IEM Winter? Should we just talk about how it's gone so far?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, yeah, basically, we've had a tournament here, and there's been a few storylines kind of emerging from it that are worth talking about. I guess we should probably start just by talking about what now for Mouse Sports, or Mouse as they are now rebranded to. The reason this is of any interest to everybody is because we keep waiting on where this final destination for I don't mean final destination like a movie where everyone dies, although Rops's career currently could be in that movie. But it's this final destination for Rops. Where's he going to go after Mouse? Nobody knows. There's talks about G2. There's talks about FaZe. But the bottom line is, when I actually looked at it, I was thinking, do we still have to give these guys time? And the reality is they've been together now for over 300 days with the Dexter lineup, and they pretty much go to tournaments and crap out, with the exception of that Flashpoint that they won from nowhere. So, look, I think Rops is in a bit of a funk as well. I get it. He's not even playing at sort of star player levels, but you would be tuned out by now. But it's just like, it's got to be time for a move now. This team has literally gone nowhere.
Oh, no, one of the things I find ridiculous is, again, what I always, when I use that term I use for, like, the legendary players who won the majors, where I call them CS royalty. So, for example, until, like, last year, you weren't allowed to criticise Olof Meister, even though, look at the year we're in, guys. He has been washed for, like, 2 years now. It's crazy. Like, we're not even just talking about, like, 3 months. Like, it's been a long time, but he's CS royalty, so he gets a pass. I'll notice people are really sort of, like, hit and miss how they put people in that category, though. Because to me, if you're going to do that, you should also probably give a break to people who are like the best players in the world and in tough circumstances. But no, as usual, we'll never get that for anyone who's a good player in Mouse Sports, as Nico found out. So one of the bizarre things I found about the major is, even though I agree with the analysis, when I watched some of the games of Mouse Sports at the major, I'll be real, it looked like Rops was just straight up baiting his teammates and sort of...
No, literally.
Out,
He was the last one alive in so many rounds. So.
No, it wasn't wrong. But the problem is this, right? People were saying it who were analysts as if, like, it's disgraceful. How dare he? Like Richard just said, think how long he's been in what is essentially a dud team. The worst thing about that team is that they had the one event really early on that gave you this false hope. And by the way, I told everyone after that event it was false hope, because if you just looked at the numbers were mental. If people don't know, I think everyone in the team had above like a 1.1 rating on HLTV Augsburg. You are aware that's like probably like better than Na'Vi at the fucking major. I think even one of their players would probably have dropped below that. Like, this is outrageous stuff. That was never going to replicate itself. But you might have hoped like at least some aspects might continue. My problem with that team goes like this. I don't blame Rops at all if he's bored, if he's checked out. Like, as you said, they're not even in the mix. They're not even a dark horse team, right? Like, they don't even have, with, by the way, on paper, a worse roster, in the server, a better roster. They don't even have the potential like Ents does. When I watch Ents play, look, they don't actually deliver like big results often, but they're always in these games. They look like they're playing real Counter-Strike, and obviously if Snappy could have gone, they would have been like, there's a million factors I can hope for, and they're a newer team. Mouse Sports, like, they've tested out this lineup. They've seen everything it can do. By the way, spoiler, not a lot. The only things I can take from this team is, aside from the Rops angle, because obviously everyone knows, hopefully he gets to a better team, we can forget that part of the story. The only good piece of news, if you're actually a Mouse fan for me, is Frozen, which is that actually, in the meantime, while everyone was like, it's just Rops, I have to say now, I can't say that. Actually, Frozen is pretty good. Like, he has had a bunch of big tournaments, and he has actually fairly often been able to perform as well, which, if anything, shows how bad the rest of the team is, that you got two young players that, like, one already for real could be a top 5 player in the world, and the other one genuinely at times looks like a top 20 player. How can that not be the basis for like a real team? So I have my questions about Dexter. I think Acor's been fucking garbage in this team. I almost feel bad now. Like, mate, you should have just taken that fucking Astralis off ages ago, mate. It would have been better for you. And then the BMAS one is like, he's just never been anything for me. He's still a player that's far too inexperienced. It's still going to take him a bit longer, it feels like. And I also get the vibe myself. If you look at the team he's in, there's no way, surely, they can be using him in the role that he would ideally be suited for. So in my opinion, people like BMAS, and we've got to stop doing this in Counter-Strike. It's another grim story. It's like, why recruit the guy because you think he's skilled and then not give him the roles where he could showcase that skill? And if your answer is, but he's not quite as good, well, then don't recruit him, you fucking idiot. You just answered your own question, didn't you? I'm sick and tired, basically, Richard, of seeing people recruit like left wingers and then have them play central fucking defense or something like. It's just silly. So to me, the whole squad is like, all I would say is this: like, what's the charm of the team? Like, who's a fan of this team? As far as I can tell, you're just a Rops fan. That's it. Or maybe a Rops and Frozen fan. It's the only reason to watch the team. Yeah. So I think that whole team, like, listen, once Rops leaves, assuming he does, you got to do something drastic to the squad. Or you got to just, like, understand that you're only ever going to be, like, a fucking also ran. That's the best case scenario for me.
Yeah, and look, it's like, don't get me wrong, I think, like, Dexter has established himself as sort of a middle-of-the-pack IGL, right? I'm all right with that. The question mark was, what would he do outside of Australia? And, you know, he's won a tournament.
Not terrible.
Yeah, not terrible, but certainly not great. And I don't know if he's got the chops for a rebuild, because I think if Rops is out the door, Frozen's probably thinking about it next. And then what do you do? And as you said, Acor's been a bust, and probably wished he had took that Astralis gig, because, I mean, certainly they could use an AWPer right now. Which will take us to the next topic, Astralis.
I also get the vibe from him if I look at his career. If I look at the one period of his career where he was actually, like, bad, not even just underwhelming, just bad. Like, some guys are primary AWPer, he's not even getting the frags. I have to say, like, Acor cannot be a player who comes just like we're talking about Rops, like anyone out there, just sign him and it'll be good. No. Acor, like on his box, it says an asterisk, like, you know, it does not come with IGL included. Like, you need a fucking good IGL as far as I can tell, because if I look at it, right, Asilian did a good job with him, even Huxley did a half-decent job with him. Yeah. I just don't think Dexter, because Dexter is a fragging IGL and comes from a totally different type of scene and type of Counter-Strike. I just don't think he was well-suited. So in my opinion, whoever gets Acor next, you better be the right kind of... In fact, I'd even go, no joke, if I'm a team or a player, I'd go and ask those former IGLs he had and people that worked with him in the org, just ask him, like, what do you think the difference was? Because there's got to be something to unlock in him, because it can't just be that he's just terrible now. Like, his skills just don't make sense that they're this bad.
I mean, sure, but obviously there is always the chance it's like one of those form things where it's just a temporary flash in the pan. You know, but yeah, what it reminds me a little bit of is the Kusta situation, funnily enough. I remember, obviously, when Kusta was at NME and he was absolutely popping off, he looked incredible. And then he gets that Team Liquid move and was really underwhelming and went missing in all of the big games and all of the big tournaments. And we were all left scratching our head as to what had happened. Oh. And then obviously when we talked to Ryu, the coach, he said basically it was my job to totally micromanage Kusta. Everyone else on the server knew what they were meant to be doing. All of my calls, all of my input was sort of just telling Kusta where to move to on the map, what to do. And that was sort of elevating his game, giving him that additional 10, 20% that made him look lights out. And that's how he transitioned the move. And I think, you know, probably... a little bit of that going on with Acor. I mean, I don't know. I have no sort of insight into what happened at Mad Lions, but he looked...
Things along those lines.
Yeah, but he looked like a real top-tier talent at that moment in time. He was the reason the team was sort of doing as well as it was. And unfortunately, he sort of just has never replicated that in this Mouse Sports lineup and has looked really bad in some situations. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, Astralis, while we're talking about Danish AWPers and failing, they went to IEM Winter, crapped out, didn't even use an AWPer in this tournament. They were running 5 rifles. Pretty disappointing overall. And for me, it sort of indicates what I felt might be true about this team, that if Config and Blame F don't frag out, if Blame F doesn't get his lurk frags and Config doesn't get the ones up front, then what does this team actually do? What does it look like? You know, Glaive, great IGL, sure, but Lucky and Zipnix both represent a bottleneck in terms of skill. And so at this tournament, the tournament prior to this, Glaive was AWPing instead of Lucky. I don't think Glaive particularly liked that. And then at this tournament, just no AWP at all in the team. So I applaud the experimentation, but again, first of all, you've cuckolded Bubsky in a way that I just didn't even think was, not even I thought was conceivable.
Yeah, because quite really is, Reek. There's just levels to this that we still don't even know that they're going to plunge to. Like, it just gets worse and worse for this fuck.
Yeah, exactly. So having to watch a tournament where they're running 5 rifles and he can't even get on the server is insane. But also, it sort of begs the question: well, what's the long-term strategy here going to be? Like, look, he's going to have to pick up the AWP again at some point, right?
I mean, to me, I think he is inevitably either here's my prediction, right? If he doesn't use the AWP at all, they will just be so bad, like this tournament, that they will be so irrelevant. They'll eventually come to a crisis point where even just from the other players that are good, I assume they have to force action. So to me, it's like I just said about that whole Grim thing. If you really believe Lockie is a really good player, listen, don't let anyone gaslight you. His primary weapon is the AWP. You can go look this up. All the stats are there. He must be the AWPer of this team, and you have to live and die by it like you do all AWPers when you were at fucking tier 1. So if he is good enough, then play him with the AWP. If he isn't good enough, he shouldn't be in the team. As we pointed out, listen, he already shouldn't be in the team. But the idea Bobski is sat there, a far superior rifler with a lot more experience, who's even won in this fucking team, is outrageous. But if fans don't get it, here's what my premise goes like this. They already tried fielding Bobski, winning with Bobski, hoping they could sell Bobski. Nobody bit. Nobody wanted to pay the kind of outrageous money they wanted. By the way, it says it all that they want more money for Bobski last year than fucking Na'Vi want for m0NESY, who people think is the next Simple.
Yeah, exactly.
That tells you all you need to know about Astralis. So my premise goes like this. Right, we crapped out on Bobski. No one's biting on that one. So fuck it. Just keep him on the bench. Because I'm assuming, by the way, he was never on like device type money. I'm assuming he's just on a reasonable salary. And then let's try the Lockie guy. Maybe we can flip him. By the way, here's the genius of being an Astralis. If you do flip him, you just bring Bobski straight in the lineup. You got your 5th player right there. You're never in trouble if you're Astralis because of how you've maneuvered your lies. But no, if I look at this team, I just think it's a waste of time top to bottom. And it does start with the Lucky equation because we can go into the other players. Like obviously, Config played like shit here. Glaive looks a little bit like the identity of their team's lost. But before we get to anyone else, you have to address this angle of the fact that now they're not even using the best gun in the fucking game. That's a massive issue. And not only that, think of the context. Motherfucker, this was the team that used it maybe the best in history. Maybe the best ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Glaive himself said that he didn't think the team could be... This is in July. He said, without an AWPer, I don't see us taking the number 1 spot.
Obviously long before Lockie came, in case people don't get the context. Yes.
And so, that was sort of the pretext for not using Bubsky as much as they had done. And the pretext for why they wanted to go out and get an AWPer. So to now end up here, where you're not using an AWPer at all, I don't get it. I don't understand what the reasons for it could be. Like, and also, I hate teams that experiment at tournaments. I hate that because you're surrendering success essentially to do something you can just be doing in practice anyway. You've got all the time to do scrims, practices, run 5 rifles there, see what it's like. But as far as I can tell, they just didn't like what was happening within the team and said, look, we'll do it this way at this tournament. And obviously Config came out and tweeted, this is one of the worst tournaments I had. Now, spoiler, he wasn't that bad. It wasn't like a catastrophe. But when you look at this team, Xyp9x is washed up as fuck. Like, this is another example. He's entering into the Olofmeister levels of, where the fans have this collective delusion about him. He's just signed a big contract. I would expect to see like a slightly rejuvenated, slightly remotivated Xyp9x. But
you see now, though, Richard, let's do a sidebar on this topic. Do you see now why I stressed so much the last few months that I don't believe Xyp9x is actually like a winner, essentially? Because here's the thing. You know this if you follow American sports. There's a famous concept in American sports called a contract year. Now, the irony is this motherfucker didn't even ball out on his contract year. But the premise goes like this. Everyone knows the first part. A lot of people don't know the second part. The premise goes, when it's your contract year, at the end of this year, your contract is up. Players basically sort of play out of their skin trying to get their next contract right. They'll do everything they can to be the best player, best teammate. But the premise goes, and this is the part people forget, it's so famous that it's a rug pull, though. And that the next year, once you give that guy his big contract, then they're just fucking chilling and they're not putting in the hours and they're not as good. And guess what? Because they don't have the same incentive to be anymore. Because if they were really doing it for the money only, they've got the money. It's too late now. It's basically the same premise that's ruined Pro Counter-Strike, which as soon as people got over 10k a month salary, if you're a little kid, which they all are mentally, 10k a month, you're already laughing. You can't lose. Henny and fucking Lucas are right. You can't lose. You already made it pro. We got 10k a month. Look at this. They don't realize, like, a winner goes, I'm about winning. It's not about the money. So I unfortunately, I get the vibe on Xyp9x. Buckle up, because I think this is going to continue for like 6 months. It might just be the rest of his career, mate. Like, I don't know if he turns the corner.
If you want a football example, this is a topic dear to my heart because at Newcastle, we've got the fucking ultimate example of this in the form of Joe Willock. Joe Willock is a young player who we loaned from Arsenal. He basically single-handedly kept us in the Premier League in the previous season. He scored 8 goals in 14 appearances from midfield to keep us in the Premier League, right? He's made 13 appearances for us this season, hasn't scored or assisted a single goal. Like he got the bag. We signed him on a permanent transfer. He got no doubt. He got a big fat contract. He was Steve Bruce's last signing. Fuck me. He's done nothing this season. He's just a ghost on the pitch. So listen, playing for a contract is a very real thing that happens in esports, and it is kind of alarming. And yeah, listen, I agree with you. I think when you hit this point, when you hit this threshold, like Zipnix can't really old Zipnix was a winner, and it was provable he was a winner, and they won everything. So imagine the sort of combined accumulation of the demotivating factors of you've won everything, you've got nothing to prove, you're a future Hall of Famer, and you've got a massive contract, and you've got a long contract.
Yes.
It was very clear to me that in the off season, he was looking for the biggest contract, not the one that would put him in a winning team or a position to win. He was literally asking the teams he was negotiating with, or rather having his agent do it. They wanted $70,000 a month. Between $60,000 and $70,000 a month. Not in this economy, not in this game, honestly. That's just so fucking beyond a joke. And so I don't know what Astralis have re-signed him for. Probably like 50K, probably in that region. You know, we live in a world where Esatag can fucking get 40K. So, I mean, what do you think's going on? And this is another broader aspect to it, but not worth getting into now. These agents are fucking out of their mind. Terrible, they've come into this scene and they're treating it like they're representing football clients for football teams. And, of course, they're not. So, yeah, listen, Zipnix wanted a big contract. He didn't want to be in a winning team, and he ended up staying with Astralis because they made him the best offer. I know everyone was turning that offer down. Even that was too much. People were interested in Zipnix. He could have had his pick of the teams, but ultimately his sort of demands were too high. So, yeah, I mean, look, I want this team to succeed in a way, even though it is an Astralis lineup, and I'll explain why. First of all, I would love to see Glaive win another trophy with a different lineup. In the same way that Device is considered a systems player, right? And that's plagued him, and that was sort of a predicate for why he joined NIP, to prove he can do it somewhere else. I think people actually sort of... I've seen fans sometimes go, when we're talking about great IGLs, people say, well, it's got to be Fallen over Glaive, because Fallen did it with undiscovered talent. Glaive had established players a little bit. I think if he could lead like a team with like Blame F and Config and Lucky and Zipnix to glory, and do it again with a sort of a third lineup for him, it wouldn't even be a discussion anymore that he would be the greatest IGL. And I really like Lucas. I've always liked him. So you've got that going on. Config's one of the best players in the world, mate. And I always want him to succeed. I love his swagger. I love his attitude. And I really like Blame F. I think he's a hardworking guy. Complexity went to shit, and it wasn't his fault. It was nothing to do with him. So for me... yeah, I'd almost want this team to succeed, but you're going to have to get real about Zipnix. He's done, and you're going to have to get real about Lucky. He is not a top-tier rifler. There is no doubt in my mind this team would be better off if they fielded Bubsky. I think, actually, then you'd be talking. The dead weight of Zipnix would sort of be offset, but whatever. Anyway, they crapped out of that tournament. Not great. So watch this space and see where they end up. The other story I want to talk about as well, just to segue into it, we should talk a little bit about Heroic. They went out in dead last place. I don't think overall, though, because of the fucking format, because it's an ESL tournament, what happened with Heroic was kind of fucked up. They lost to Godsent in a best-of-1. Shit happens. But yeah, losing 2-0 to FaZe in what was a very, very close series, like 16-14, 16-13 maps, it just kind of seemed to be they were like a little bit underwhelming at this competition. I don't think you can make any great generalizations about where they're at, but this is a type of tournament that Heroic really need to go deep in, because, you know, you've got the benefit of Na'Vi not being there. So if you're ever going to win a tournament, Heroic, it needs to be an IEM Winter or something like that. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed, but maybe it's not the end of the world.
No, the key thing is the 3 maps, because they only played 3 maps because it's a BO1 that start off with, and then they went obviously into the BO3 in the lower bracket. All 3 maps are really close. Like, it's not like they were getting destroyed or, oh my God, wow. Like, I will say, Godsent beating you ain't a great sign, even in the best of 1. You should obviously be above that level, hopefully. The phase one, everyone knows this is what FaZe do. It's not like FaZe lose every game, otherwise we wouldn't even have discussions about them. They have to win sometimes in order to then inevitably underwhelm. Spoiler, they still do that. So this just happens to be one of the series where magically they actually got some fragging and fucking killed some people. They still have players that are mega experienced. I think people forget that. Like, when you talk about LAN players, look, obviously they were full of shit with the whole, like, put us on LAN and we'll show you, but you didn't show us anything. But it's true, on LAN they are way better. Like, you see how much better some of their players are, even in terms of knowing what to do in the game. And I still have my questions about the heroic mental side, but I'm with you. I don't think this one result is like the alarm bell or like, fuck, it's over. Like, this is literally, how many days was this? Didn't this tournament start something mental, like 3 days after the tournament that they would just start, where they essentially exited the tournament in probably the most brutal fashion of any team in the last like 20 years in Counter. Like, I'd struggle to think of somebody who exited the tournament in worse sort of mental condition than they must have walked out of that fucking arena. So I would say maybe
SK Gaming, perhaps
be up there. That's got to be up there, certainly. No, exactly. It's one of these matches where afterwards, like, I could imagine someone would need a fucking week off after that, like, just to get your head together. Whereas instead, I assume what you did, because it's IEM, is you had to immediately jump back in the practice server, do a couple of days practice, and then fly straight to the event. So I doubt it was a great set of scenario for them. So I don't think it's the end of the world. Like, no. I'll certainly put this like on a pattern. Like, I think the angle that you put is there is very apt. I will say this is a massive missed opportunity because there is no Na'Vi at this tournament. Like, on paper, you're right. This is the event that you win that gets you back in the mix of like, whoa, maybe they can be the team that beats Na'Vi. You can't come last place in that regard. That is the downside. The narrative part's where you feel the most.
Yeah. Right. The next team I want to talk about, the UK Fnatic. Now, this is a ridiculously sad story, I think, because they did lose the opening match against Gambit. Again, best of ones. I don't know why best of ones still exist in any world. I don't know how you can have a tournament where you lose one best of one and then you play in a best of 3 for tournament survival. I think that format is dog shit, personally, and you will always get fluke results in a format like that. But anyway, they did lose their opening game, but they were able to battle back, and they had some legit wins. Like, understand, they've lost one, I think it's one best of 3 since this lineup was established, and it was to Gambit. So, you know, that's pretty good fucking going. They beat Ents here, and they did it very comfortably. They beat Big, which, you know, Big are up and down. You never know which Big's going to turn up.
Still a decent team, though. Still a decent team.
Yeah, but it's still a legit win. And honestly, they should have beat Gambit. They should have put them away. I mean, this, by the way, the first 2 maps in this series were absolutely fantastic. Like, what a way to end the year. If you guys didn't catch it live, strongly recommend you go and watch the VODs. Even if you don't watch the Overpass game, Inferno and Vertigo were fucking unreal. Vertigo especially. And, you know, just if you didn't catch it and you haven't seen the scores, 19-16 to Fnatic on Inferno, their map pick. Gambit, again, they've been struggling on Vertigo, a map they used to have in their pocket on the, you know, in the online era. 22-19 to Gambit on that, and unfortunately the deciding map was Overpass and it didn't deliver. Fnatic really, really struggled on that one. Looked like the mental had broke a little bit. Funnily enough, it seemed to be Crims that was the worst offender on that map, in terms of just not being able to psychologically get over the fact they were that close to beating Gambit. But I'll tell you, in terms of, you know, excitement about this roster and the fact that we can now safely say this is a tier 1 team, I think they've absolutely proven themselves here, and they definitely want to watch moving forwards. I actually think this is a really exciting team.
Yeah, I didn't take this as any kind of a bad sign at all. Like, they were literally a few rounds away from being in the fucking playoffs of their first LAN ever. Yes, it's a studio LAN for people who don't know. There's no crowd, etc. But think about all these. By the way, they're at a way bigger disadvantage than all these other teams. Most of these other teams have just been to like the major, if not the major, and another LAN.
Yeah.
Some of them, like even Gambit went to another fucking LAN. It wasn't Blast, obviously. It was that one in fucking Czech Republic or whatever, one at the V4 Future. So everyone else has got all this LAN experience. Fnatic's coming with their debut LAN with a fucking new lineup that's only existed for a few months. I thought generally they looked pretty good, as you say. Like at the end of the day, they genuinely almost did sweep Gambit. They almost beat Gambit 2-0. And then you look at the other results. The big one, again, that is a quality side. Big, very rarely outside of the top 15 in the rankings, basically ever. ENCE is an all right team. They're certainly not bad. They've got some promise. So I think this is pretty legit. And as you pointed out there, the main factor that fucked them in the series against Gambit was literally one of their best players, Crims, just inexplicably having a bad series.
Yeah.
If you look at even the rest of the LAN, it didn't look like he was having any problems. So I put that down to a one-off. That can happen. And as you say, the first loss they had also to Gambit was the fucking BO1. Like, I find it hard to put too much stock in BO1's guy. I know people out there like, oh no, but like in theory you should still win them at the same percentage. It's psychologically what they represent though. Like there's a, and for even when you're losing a BO1, it sort of doesn't matter as much. It doesn't count as much somehow until you're eliminated. It's not that big a deal. So personally, I think that all the hype train for Fnatic is still on the rails, boys. I'm excited for the next LAN.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I'll be honest as well. What's actually surprised me a little bit, and I was always a believer. I like to say, I think Alex is a great system IGL. We've said that many times on this show, and I was an advocate for Smoothie joining the team, even when it seemed some people were still a bit, not sold on that idea. But what has really surprised me is the strength and depth on the maps. Like their map pool is actually legit. At this tournament, they won games on Inferno, they won games on Mirage, they won games on Nuke. Overpass really only looked to be like the map that they struggled with. And I think that's offset with the fact that is a very strong map for Gambit. Traditionally, that was the map they used to beat Na'Vi on comfortably in the online era. So, I mean, for me, I think, honestly, Fnatic moving forward are a dangerous opponent for anybody to face. It's also sort of a tantalizing glimpse into an alternate timeline where, had all the COVID bullshit not gone down the way it went down, this could have been very similar to the Cloud9 roster, right? You've got Alex and Mezzy both popping off and doing a great job. And honestly, it's, maybe there wasn't a Brolan over there in that Cloud9 team. But again, I wish that lineup had just had enough time to sort of show what it could have done, because maybe it would have been similar to this, if not better. But yeah, Fnatic, great first LAN out, one to watch. Let's talk about Gambit. Gambit come into this tournament in a strange position. The former number one team during the first part of the online era, a team that used to regularly just win tournaments, rock up and beat people. The team that was so good, it spurred on the changes in Na'Vi with the inclusion of Bit and a tactical reshuffle. The dominant team in the most dominant region in the world. And yet they find themselves now fourth in the world rankings. They didn't even sort of make that seed, if you want. They went out in 5th to 6th here. They struggled in every game. They were eventually beaten by sort of the dead team walking of Vitality, that we'll definitely talk about. And I've just got to say, I think fans are still, I think they're delusional. I think Gambit fans are legitimately delusional, because on the subreddit and on social media, I keep seeing people saying, no, you can't use the word onliners about this team. Richard and Thorin were way too harsh on them. They finished semi-finals at a major at LAN. It's one of the worst and weakest semi-final runs I've seen in major history. So, I don't know what else to... And then they got absolutely abused by Na'Vi, a team they used to beat for fun. So, for me, I'm not saying they're onliners in the sense that there's this massive gulf between online and LAN. But there is something not right with Gambit when they get to LAN. They lost to Virtus Pro here. They dropped a map against FaZe. They nearly got eliminated by Fnatic at their first LAN. And then they lose to Vitality. You cannot tell me this is the same team from the first half of this year. It isn't. something has gone very, very wrong with these guys on either a mental level. Something's happened, and you know, it is perfectly acceptable now to say, yeah, we've got the evidence, we've got the data. They were better online. It's okay. We're not. No one's saying they cheated. No, that isn't even implied. LAN is a different beast, and Gambit have not tamed that beast yet for me.
I'd even throw in there as well, because obviously this discussion about the terminology. It's like, here's the problem. When I get asked this question, I think someone maybe even asked me on like one of my recent like donated discussions or something. People always ask me this exact question, like it's either about Gambit or Heroic. They just say, are they onliners? So my question to them is always, how do you define onliner? Because if you mean onliner as in they are better online, well, yeah, inarguably. And by the way, don't do that thing every idiot does, go, but everyone's better online. Not wrong. Navi isn't better online. It's absolutely false. G2 isn't better online. Absolutely false. Like
Heroic, we just talked about.
It's not the case, is it? Like they're actually better online, you morons. FaZe is better online. No, the point here is, right, if you mean they suck on LAN, definitely they're not. That's not the case at all. But if you mean they're better online, absolutely they're onliners. Like they were literally the best team in the world. Fuck the best team in the world. They were one of the best teams to ever play Counter-Strike when we were only online. But on LAN, they're just a good team. Like, listen, I still think just because of the lack of contenders, they're potentially in the mix to maybe do something against Na'Vi. But it's not like they're like a clear-cut number 2 or something. Like they're certainly not. Like you can actually argue for some of the other teams if you want to on different bases. So my main problem with Gambit is I had this vibe at the first LAN they played, IEM Cologne. It wasn't that they were bad. Like individually, the players still looked like they tried to play the same way. You even see them put up similar numbers even at these LANs. But what I see that's different is this. Online, the reason why I say they were one of the greatest Counter-Strike teams ever is the control they had over the game and the decision-making was fucking unreal. Like, I've never seen players that inexperienced making these reads and fucking rotations and follow-ups and set pieces. And so I'm sorry, I have to say it. And I sort of implied it or speculated it back then. But the difference between LAN and online is your fucking coach cannot talk except in timeouts on LAN. So I think that coupled with the inexperience is what holds them back now. I think, listen, when you have people like they had in their coach, you have mega experienced people. We're talking people who are like me who've watched all of competitive Counter-Strike, the entire history of the game. Like, you can't take someone like that out of the room and stop them talking and think there's going to be no impact at all. And then you add in, they are still inexperienced. The real problem most guys have is, like, they have the game to be a really good team, but they are rookies. They are still fucking rookies, guys. What we mean by rookies in the LANs, remember, if this was LAN, if this was their first LAN, that would have been their first LAN ever. I mean, Cologne would be technically the first, but you know what I mean? Like, you would never go on, in your second LAN, which is what the major was. In your second LAN, you're meant to win it or you're a failure. You'd never say that. No. Unfortunately, the stupid era created this, like, unreasonable set of standards, which unfortunately, and I'm just going to say this again, we must hold them to. Here's why we must hold them to, guys. Because I was fine at the beginning of the online era. I'm weird like this, going, you know what? Should we just say none of these results count? And until we go back to LAN, this is all just nonsense, spinning our wheels. But everyone else ain't cool with that, because what purpose would they have in their lives? Like, we had to gaslight ourselves that online mattered and it was real. Now it is. It's just not real in the sense that it translates one-to-one with LAN, unfortunately. And this will just go down as probably the ultimate example of all time, right? Because there was never in the past a team that was like clear-cut number 1 online and then just not, like, just good on LAN. Like, I'd even say the best example, I'll use a player example, because this also used to get people triggered. But if you understand the terminology discussion we started, it makes perfect sense. This is why I always called Xantares an onliner. Is Xantares a shit LAN player? Definitely not. But is he one of the best players in the world on LAN? Definitely not. If he's on the internet, it's not an exaggeration. He is mathematically and with your eyes one of the best players you will ever watch play Counter-Strike. Only on the internet, though.
Yeah, and it also, look, let's also talk about, you know, how difficult it is to be in this unique position for Gambit. You know, I'm sympathetic to a degree. You sort of have your coming of age in the online era, and so this isn't like, by the way, a team of experienced players. You know, like having a purple patch in an online era, because you would be able to say, oh well, they've gone to all these lands, so it's all okay. These guys literally just entered into our collective consciousness, you know, as winners in an online era. The only thing we knew about them was online. And so as a result of that, unfortunately, when you go to LAN and you're not kind of as good because you're still building up your LAN repertoire, people are going to notice and people are going to say things. We're not saying it to be disparaging, but it's like, it sort of is disparaging. But at the end of the day, you are going to have to get over that hump if you want to be a true great team. And all the pieces are there. I'm not calling for roster changes, but when we get back to LANs being the norm, not the exception, assuming TOs will let us do that, this is what it's going to be like for you every week. And people are going to remember that you were the team that was winning. You were the number one team in the world. You were the team that was stopping Na'Vi ascending to the level we all expected them to get to. So listen, I think the fans that are sort of saying, no, everything's fine, this level of performance is fine from Gambit, you don't want to get into that mindset. You don't want that poison to seep into this team. We could be still potentially looking at one of the best lineups of all time. But
I just need more time. But it's why I've been very clear, even from the major on. I didn't do like other people, like, oh, maybe the next LAN they'll bounce back. No, I said 3 months, a few months is what we're talking about. Basically, you need like 4 or 5 LANs under your belt. Then we'll have a sense of who you actually really are. By the way, the baseline ain't terrible. Like, if we take away all the online and we didn't know about that, we'd be like, hey, this is. I'd be like when Ents did that run at the fucking arm, I'd be like, this is an up and coming team. Like, there's some pieces here, Richard, and they should really keep this lineup together. I'm excited to see what this core could do in 2022. Our problem is just that the online, like the weight of it and our memory of it, it's still not that long ago, makes you feel like it should be now. It should be immediately. But I would say I would definitely echo the latter point. Normally, when a team can't live up to its potential, you do make a roster move. That is exactly when you make it. This is a rare example, in my opinion, and Heroics is similar to the case. I don't make any roster moves if I'm these teams, unless it's literally like a ridiculous one, like Simple or Device to join it. Unless it's like that level, you're not making any of these roster moves. You keep this team completely and see where you go next year.
Exactly, but it is quite telling, I think, that the one player that's sort of been better than where he was in the online era at the LANs has been Hobbit, right? That's it's not coincidence either.
Convenient, isn't it? I know.
Yeah. So listen, like I say, I just want to address the delusional fans. It's not even a pop at Gambit, but they're gonna have to get their heads around the things that work online don't always work on LAN. It's just that simple, and I'm sure they can adapt. But if this becomes the norm, it'll become a habit, and if it becomes a habit, it's going to be one of the most wasted opportunities of all time for them. Also, I wanted to talk about Godsent. Godsent had an unbelievable tournament here. In fact, they've had an unbelievable few weeks. Obviously, for those that don't know, maybe you've been not keeping up with the scene. Godsent is the taco-driven Brazilian lineup with Phelps, but that also, they've added some upcoming Brazilian players to that, guys like Dumao, Bartin, Lato. And, they've qualified. They're in the ESL Pro League now. They won. They finished third in the conference, which was enough to get promoted. Taco was very emotional in an interview. And then they've had a run here where they finished 5th to 6th level with Gambit at a tournament. And, listen, they got there, sure, by beating Heroic in a best of 1. They beat Big. They did lose to VP. They took a map off NIP. And so not a super strong run, but one that shows they can give these level of teams a game. And for me, if you want to talk about the most improved team in World Counter-Strike, it's unquestionably these guys right now. Because if you think about where they were 2 months ago, they're probably ranked something like 60th in the world. And now here they are, climbing up, getting into these international caliber tournaments and winning games. So I'll just direct everyone to what I said, where I think actually Taco is going to make a good IGL. And I feel vindicated, Duncan.
But it is way, if you think about the history of people who become IGLs, the role he is doing it from, the most obvious role to do it from is support. If people don't know, that's how people like MSL did it, etc. Obviously, why people like, you can go through the list. There's a whole bunch of people who are obvious people who's transitioned from that role. Now, the reason why that role makes the best IGL coach, etc., is because you already essentially have to have self-awareness that you aren't the star player, how to help other people succeed, and what the dynamics of a team are. And if you're clever, probably even help help the team leader put the base structure of the team together and scout opponents, look in the demos and stuff. And let's be real, he can actually like straight up just speed dial Fallen and other people in his career and have a convo with them and ask them what they think. Yeah. Obviously, if they're making,
he said he has been doing that.
Yeah, perfect. That's there's an angle people don't understand. I always had a lot of respect for Taco's actual game, as in, like, listen, his skills were obviously not very good, but in that context, he obviously worked on his game, practice, blah blah blah. There's even an old story where there was one point in time where he supposedly like just tracked all the opposing teams like fucking utility or something, just single-handedly, even though he wasn't the IGL. So like, he's clearly a great team player. So of all the people suited to at least transition to that role, he's one. It's just the problem is that's another one of those roles where it just takes a while to get established. It's very rare you're going to swap and then, you know, the next day you're some world-class IGL. No, it's you. That's like a 6 month to a year job. So if you look how many months in he is now, this is about when he should be starting to get some results and starting to show a bit of positive form. And as you mentioned, it ain't just Phelps, because that's obviously the only under the name of the team. By the way, spoiler, Phelps is absolutely the best player. But that like Demau guy looks like he has some pretty good skills. And some of the others, they're just so new that like, listen, anything they're showing you now is like potential or something for the future. So I'm certainly interested. Obviously, they're going to face the problem every Brazilian team does, is you can never really know who you can get for transfers or if you can do roster moves. But I'm with you. I would have had this team a few months ago. It's like, who gives a fuck? Who would ever want to watch them play? Now it's like they're at least like a team with some charm to them.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, you know, I'm gonna say this. I don't think Taco even, you know, has been looking that bad. He did sort of struggle a little bit at this tournament, but you're not looking to him to frag out anyway. But when they were coming through, because I watched some of the ESL conference matches, you know, there was a number of close series. You know, there was one, I think, they beat LDLC, and I think Taco dropped like, you know, he had 2 maps there where he dropped like 20 frags. You know, it's like, but people seem to forget there was a moment in time where back in the old days of the Luminosity lineup, everyone was saying, especially Brazilian fans, Taco's got to go. His game was so deficient for what the meta had evolved to that there was everybody, you know, and it felt like every week one of his teammates or Dead, the coach and manager, was coming out and saying, you don't understand, he's a great teammate. And people were going, we don't care if he's a fucking nice guy to go out and have a drink with, he's dog shit at the game. And then suddenly Taco became Vaco, if you remember. People started saying he must be cheating. I mean, you can't win. You need to improve your game. You improve your game. The fans say you're cheating, of course. Like, what the fuck do you do? But, like, people forget that he elevated his game in such a short space of time to be so good that people accused him of being on the gear. And it's like, listen, if you know anything about Taco, like, I know he doesn't fucking talk to me. He doesn't like me. I think his Twitter game's whack. He probably believes all the bullshit. Like, oh, Richard doesn't like Brazilians. Whatever. Who gives a fuck? I'm just talking about the man and the player. And for me, out of all of those guys from that lineup, he's the one that I would back to be a winner. He's the one I would back to actually go back to, you know, stage one and build something up. It was never like Fallen, coldzera. These guys are not the guys you think they are. Fallen has all these businesses, all this money. Like this Last Dance project that we're going to talk about is just the wackiest fucking thing on earth. And it's just a way to extend a career. And remember, by the way, when you're talking about a legendary player like Fallen, go out on a high, mate. It hasn't worked at Liquid. You had a good shot. You didn't really even get to be IGL for a long period of time over there. It's not your fault. People will forget and forgive. This Brazilian lineup you're assembling is a fucking disaster waiting to happen. But like I said, we'll talk about that in a bit. You know, what about the other guys? Third just cares about money, just sat on stream saying outrageous shit every week, just arguing with people, doesn't care. You know, he was the 3rd best player in the world at fucking one point in his career. Actually, who's the guy? coldzera, he's got rock star mentality. He's fucking delusional. He says, me, go and play in that Last Dance with all them washed up Brazilian players. You're talking about yourself, Cold. It's you. The call is coming from inside the house, Cold. You actually probably need to be in a lineup like that to bring you back to reality. Meanwhile, what did Taco do? Never associated with any of these big money, doomed to failure projects. He went back to Brazil. He went into the Brazilian scene and he found young players he can play with, persuaded Phelps, one of the most underutilized Brazilian talents of all time, and finally got Phelps in a stable role, no worries about playing with people that he doesn't quite vibe with or overlapping roles. Taco said, I'll just be the IGL, I'll make it work, I'll work on my game, and he's developing young talent in Brazil, which, by the way, Brazil could be like Denmark if you would stop recycling your old washed-up players.
Yes.
Right? You've got to stop that if you want to get to the next level. Taco's the one doing it. So I will absolutely give him the fucking props he deserves, and I hope other people do too. Like, Godsent might never win a tournament, mate, but like I say, most improved team and proof that Taco was the real winner all along. Absolutely.
By the way, that's an angle I've always thought was so misunderstood in history. Do people forget the way it went with the Brazilians? I'll give you a quick history lesson. It went like this. Taco joined it in 2016. They were like, if not the best team, they were like top 2. Let's put it that way, right? Then next year after that, they have a team that had that amazing run in the summer where they won the 5 out of the 6 tournaments. Again, one of the best teams in the world. Yeah, not the best team that year, but again, probably top 3 or top 4 if we're doing the numbers, right? So we've had 2 years where you're an elite team. Then, if you remember, they kick him out, don't they? Because they don't need him anymore. Why would we need shitters like Taco? We're getting fucking Stewie 2K and Tarek, mate. They just won a major. By the way, when they brought in Stewie 2K and Tarek, that much vaunted Stewie 2K and Tarek, that all you people watching CSGO still suck the dick off to this day as though they're amazing players. Oh, what happened to that MIB? Fuck all. Absolutely sweet fuck all. At the end of the year, Yanko coached them so they were like almost in a position to be a contender, and then they kicked Yanko because that's how fucking dumb they are. That's how smart people like Fallen and Coldzera are. That's their eye test for the game. And what was little Taco doing the whole time while they were doing this super team of America's players? Oh, he was just off in a little squad called Team Liquid, being one of the best support players in the world, going absolutely to like every single final. And by the way, routinely spanking the fuck out of that MIBR team every time they played him, pretty much. So like, this guy genuinely, I think the only sad thing in his career is when they sort of looked and went, shit, maybe that Taco and Zeus have something to them. Sad thing is, I know I even told these guys this, I just feel sad that they accepted the offer. Again, when your fucking guy who fucked you over turns around and goes, maybe I was wrong, you go, suck my dick, motherfucker. I'm above you now. I don't reach down and help you. You never helped me. Sadly, these guys, because they're just mates, just went back to the fucking well, didn't they? And they just helped tank their own careers. So I think Taco could have actually had an even better career if he'd have sort of continued without those fucking guys. Because here's the thing that people don't know. Just like that, I don't know if it was ever real, but just like the Zipnix to FaZe move that we all speculated would on paper have been a great move if it was the real Zipnix. Taco was considered like that. There were a lot of other top teams and players who aren't like fans. They don't just look at the stats. They were like, I wish I had a Taco on my team. You don't think, how many people do you think in 2016 who were superstar players, who by the way were better than Coldzera skill-wise, how many of them do you think looked at Coldzera and were like, well, where's my Taco? Nico's just like, I haven't got anyone, I'm just doing it myself. Simple's like, I don't even like any of my teammates. And Coldzera's like, this guy just does everything. Yeah, exactly. And by the way, there's another thing when we get to the thing later with Coldzera. It's like, Coldzera, you haven't had Taco next to you for all these years, mate. I don't know why you still live in this delusional fantasy world where you're just as good without him. Like, you aren't. Go look at the fucking stats, mate. It's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, and so listen, I don't know if he probably doesn't even watch the show, but I am happy for him, and I hope.
I actually think, by the way, no joke. I don't know how many times you've met him in person, but I'm almost certain in person he'd have a drink with you. Like, he's one of those weird people. Like the two people for me who were the weirdest online and offline. It's going to be a mad pull because there's no connection. Yeah. Is actually the flying DJ Ulrich from ESL and Taco from, in this case, Godsent, right? Because on Twitter they are just two of the most stupid dickheads of all time. Like, the shit they say is not funny, it's not intelligent, there's nothing to it. You just go and like, you just look like an arsehole, mate. But what's mad is in person they both come off way better. In the case of Taco, he's actually quite a friendly guy in real life. He's not aggro like that, you know.
This is what's insane about sort of, I don't know what Twitter does. I don't know how Twitter essentially distills a three-dimensional personality into making you be a dickhead. Which, by the way,
with everyone at some degree, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. Listen, people say that about us. Obviously.
Yeah, of course, I agree. I would agree.
Yeah. Like Twitter Thorin might be a dickhead for all I know because it's just one aspect of you, right? It's not the totality of your personality. But listen, I've had drinks with Taco. I've had drinks with all those Brazilian guys. Let me tell you a story from the major I didn't tell. I got invited out to a lunch. The players were meeting up and having a dinner. They went to some, it might have been a Brazilian barbecue place in Sweden. And they said, hey, do you want to come along to this? And I said,
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, I said, like, I generally don't like to go to these things because it makes players feel uncomfortable. And they said, "Oh no, everyone wants you here. Come down." So I went, and obviously, like Zeus was there, Dead was there, right? And you know, a few other players, and I won't name names, but Dead's the other character in this story. So I was like, we were talking, and he basically said, "Listen, you know, obviously, like all that stuff you've written and sort of said about me and the cheating thing and all that." He goes, "I just want you to know that, like, I'm glad you're there doing that type of thing." And
I sound as fuck as dead.
yeah.
People don't know that,
and he said, "I fucked up, and I completely own it." And I said, "Mate, like, I hope you realize I feel bad about having to do shit like that. It's not like I take any joy in it. Like, I think you're a good guy. I think, you know, I remember distinctly." You know, when I had, you know, we had fans that were, I was doing like a charity thing for like a sick kid, and he was a fan of the Luminosity SK lineup, and I caught those guys as they were leaving the tournament and said, "I know this is like Dead on the rush, but you would make this kid's life." Mate, they fucking all Dead went and got all the players to sign the hats, gave us extra jerseys. He's like just a sound as fuck guy, but then you put him in this esports equation and this like must win mentality, and something fucks up and goes wrong, and it's like, I know what it's like to be like a fucking highly strung dude who gets emotional when your reputation's impugned. And yet there we were having a beer, having a lunch, a lovely guy basically saying you did the right thing, no hard feelings, and me sort of saying, "I'm sorry, it had to be you." Like, so listen, I know these guys are sound when you meet them in person. It's like, there's just something about this business that makes everyone crazy. Like, you know, it's so fucked up. But yeah,
so part of it is like, if you want to go like slightly into it, I would say part of it is it's that weird phenomenon. Like, because here's the analogy I'll give you. It's the closest one I can come with. Has no one ever been at school and had a person who, if it was just you and them, you were basically mates, but if it was you, them, and then throw in 3 popular people, they're almost against you. Like, it's like, if anything, they almost like are a bit distant. Somehow, the problem with Twitter is this: it feels like everyone's watching in a way they are, aren't they? Especially because, by the way, we're talking about people who have hundreds of thousands of followers. And in the case specifically of these players, we'll probably talk about this in a future piece of content, so it's a sidebar I'll leave open now. I think a bigger issue is this as well. And this is the worst thing about the Brazilian scene, is those guys, when they know the Brazilian fans are watching, they become totally different people. It has a horrible effect on them, where it's like, basically, I'll use another analogy. If you take it in this scenario, they become the guy who should be your friend, but now he's sort of like it's like the cool kids are calling him to their table. It's like, oh yeah, I'd love to sit with you, but I've got to go. It's like, that's what they become. Like, it makes them become dickheads. So unfortunately, it's specifically like a Brazilian problem in the sense that, like, listen, it might affect us on a small level, but they particularly seem beholden to those fans. And as I say, we'll have a whole thing where we'll probably get into it, but I feel like that actually brings them down, unfortunately, because the one thing they can't do, if you notice, is the number one crime in Brazil is to ever speak in any way against Brazilians. I thought Fallen was actually quite brave, actually, even in the tweets he made. But even then, he was very careful about how he worded that. He sort of worded it in the most kumbaya sort of way ever. And it was a lot of like, we, and it's not us. And he tried to sort of, by the way, as though he's like sending hate messages to people. But it's like, there's something about that fan base is unlike any other.
Yeah, I had it the other day, and again, obviously, you're getting a window into a future piece of content here, so we won't go into depth. But yeah, I saw I was talking to, while I was getting corral-hoed, I talked to like a manager at an org, who basically is there to deal with the Brazilian fan base and the Brazilian operations, and I was saying, will you condemn? You know, specifically, will you condemn Brazilian fans that harass and threaten people? And he said, "I condemn all threats and harassment." I said, "Yes, okay, good."
Notice he carefully didn't say Brazilian there.
Yeah, and nobody wouldn't.
No, exactly.
He wouldn't, and no, but I totally understand why. From talking to these guys down the years, it's you will be labelled a traitor, and again. There's this thing that we do on the internet, and it's not just an internet phenomenon. It's just the internet's a tool that makes it really easy. Whatever epithet we need to attach to you to dehumanize you, so we can justify our vitriolic hatred, so we can give ourselves permission to do anything to you, that's where we'll go to. So in that instance, it's traitor. You're a traitor to your nation. In our instance, it's that, when we criticize an individual who happens to be a Brazilian, we're xenophobes. And it's like, listen, out of all of the guys, by the way, who work in like esports and aren't native or endemic to Brazil, I would back my knowledge of Brazilian history and Brazilian culture, all the books. I used to love that shit. I used to fucking love that shit. As I said, Sepultura were like my favorite fucking band as a kid. I loved everything Brazilian. I supported Newcastle United because in 88-89 season, we signed a Brazilian called Mirandinha. I was like blown away by so, you know, the idea that I've got anything against the country, but there is something rotten in the fan culture. Because like I don't like it being a perpetual war zone.
Oh, it's garbage in there.
Because these guys obviously get caught up in it, as you said. It makes them behave in a way that they don't want to.
They're literally actually caught in the middle, Richard, because we're going, why don't you condemn the other side? And they're like, why, you know, condemn the gringos, condemn the gringos. Like, they're just stood in the middle between, for them, two sets of pitchforks.
And we've told this story many times, but, you know, obviously, when we've sat down with these guys, which we've done many, many times at events, and they say, listen, you don't understand it. The fans give it to us worse than they give it to you. You know, so I'm sympathetic. But at the end of the day, like I say, we'll talk about it. We never shirk a difficult subject. So we will get round to that. But long story short, congratulations to Godsent on a great run. And very happy for Taco. He's a player who deserves success in an already glittering career. So that brings us to sort of where we're up to in IEM Winter, which for those who don't know, that's going to be starting up in the next couple of days. We've basically got a sort of weird situation where the semi-final is going to be, let me actually bring this up. We got Vitality versus Pro, which is sort of a tantalizing matchup, and G2 NIP. So, I mean, look, I don't want to do any previews for the games, and obviously we'll talk about them in the next episode, but just a couple of thoughts here. For me, let's just talk a little bit about G2. We said they had to win this tournament. I think, actually, when we said that, we didn't know that Nexa was going to have visa problems, and they were going to have to use Kenny S. And so, as a result, I think even being within touching distance of a final is actually a fucking hell of a thing that they've done. And listen, Kenny's not played great, but I'll just give him credit for being a fucking solid stand-in, and a lot of scrutiny around him. And it might actually be the case. I think this G2 lineup, even with Kenny as a stand-in, can beat NiP. I think they're vulnerable. So G2 could find themselves in the final. It's not inconceivable they could win the whole tournament with a stand-in, right?
Oh, no, I would actually probably pick them. Again, we're not going to go into the specifics, but I would probably pick them to make the final. I don't think they'll win the event. I actually do think the winner will be whoever wins the Vitality versus, who was in the other match?
Versus Pro, Vitality.
Versus Pro, sorry, yes. Yeah. I think whoever wins that match wins the tournament, personally. But listen, as you say, the idea you even make top four with a stand-in, it's already legit. And I would just say this, even though I agree, Kenny S was nowhere near the Kenny S you hope he is. It's his first land back. He's barely played anything approaching official Counter-Strike, so he should be at his absolute worst. And then actually, even though this was just a stand-in, as far as I know, they have no plans to use him, and obviously they're trying to sign that m0NESY guy, apparently. Right? I would rather they just rolled with this lineup and do a few more tournaments, see how it goes.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. For me, I don't know. I really don't know, because it's like, you know, Kenny's not even been playing CSGO lately. Obviously, he's, you know, been streaming Valorant and saying he's been having fun over in that. But yeah, it seems to me that like he's actually nowhere near as bad as he should be by rights. Like, to put it in context, like, he held his own with Amanek and Jax over the course of this tournament. And it shows that, you know, you are getting a glimpse of his actual true greatness, you know, one of the best players of all time, that he's able to sort of come back and do this. Now, he had a very rough time against Team Liquid, but yeah, he's grown into the tournament. He was great in the, you know, well, not great, but he was very good in the Vitality game. He looked like a tier 1 player, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, maybe... I just don't know. I think if they are talking to this m0NESY guy, I think you've got to get a long-term solution in the team, a long-term AWPing solution in the team, and sometimes it's better to not look back. For me, so even though I think Kenny's done a great job, I hope he's able to parlay into a move to another roster. But G2 have got to be winning things, and I don't think you do that with Kenny, personally. But listen, if G2 go on to win this competition with a stand-in,
oh, it'd be epic.
Yeah, fucking one of the most legit runs of all time, you know. So fair play. The other semi-final Virtus Pro. I want to talk about Virtus Pro actually, as we don't do that a lot here. Since they've brought in Flit, since he came in for Sanji in that sort of mad, controversial circumstances where even at the major, the players were doing interviews going, it wasn't our decision.
Shout out to fans, by the way, who were absolutely wrong for the millionth time in a row. Fans who were like, how dare they cut Sanji? Yeah. Oh, fuck you, you moron. That would be like if Bobski just left Astralis. You're like, how could he leave Astralis? Like, we're not following the story. They cocked this motherfucker. He wasn't even allowed to buy guns. They basically treated him like the bottom bitch. Like, the idea that, this was a good team with it wasn't. It's one of the reasons why even, I already had him as a dark horse before I knew about that move. As soon as they made that flip move, I was like, I'm all in on them as the dark horse. Forget Team Liquid and the other two I put in the mix. I'll just take Virtus Pro. And people can probably see why now. If you saw that bracket, dude, they were almost in the semi-finals of the major. That was a very legit team.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, I still think Jim is going to be a factor in this team moving forward. I almost feel they succeed sort of despite him. But, he's done very well at this tournament. This is the key thing here. First of all, Flit has really hit the ground running. He's looked great in these games. And I'll also just add, where are all the Yakindar haters now? Where are they? Because, that he's an online, you can't even play, you can't play that style at LAN, people said. Even pro players were sort of doubting this kid and intimating that when we get to the LAN, he'll go missing. No, he hasn't missed a beat. If anything, he's got better. By the way, if you ever want to talk about a kid who's on course to be an absolute fucking legend, just a G, look how he's completely embraced all the media aspect of it. He was out there for the show match. Literally was the first guy, sign me up. I want to play and I'll play seriously. Doing forward rolls as he's coming out, interacting with fans all day. This guy gets it. He gets that he's on a path to fucking greatness. If he can propel this Virtus Pro team into actually winning tournaments, again, they were right up there at the sort of start of the year in the online era. This is fucking insane. But I was a little bit of a doubter. I didn't know what this Virtus Pro team were actually gonna do. They're in with a real chance of winning this tournament.
I would pick them to win at this point out of the 4 teams. Basically, here's the thing. If people haven't been watching, right, I'll take it at the top there. When Richard said James playing well now, James actually played like shit at the major. That was actually the tournament. He let everyone down. Not only stats-wise, just in his game. You look in the server, he made a bunch of selfish or silly decisions that cost the team. He's playing his normal level now. But here's the key thing. Flit is having a screamer at this one. I don't think he can maintain this form. He's having a mega one. And Yakindar's already really good, as you say. So people don't get it. This team already stylistically was a nightmare to play. Their firepower is fucking legit. It's really good. Remember, the worst players in the team are Kicker and Boster now. Boster used to be a reliable sleeper carry, and Kicker always has done his job. So I don't think people get it. It's funny that I guess you're sort of right, because even I haven't sort of bigged them up as much as I should. If people ask me, who can beat Na'Vi Richard, I just go well, maybe if Gambit get the experience or Heroic get why do we never put VP in there? Actually, this VP team now, fresh off a roster move, which they're working their way into form from, this could be the second or third best team in the world. They're really good, actually. You even look who they've beaten here. They're beating quality sides. As I say, I would actually pick them to win the event. They look good.
Well, I mean, they're going to be going up against Vitality that continue to defy expectations, and Vitality, this is the test. I mean, I think it's outrageous if Virtus Pro even in this final when you look at the teams that attended. But Vitality is going to be a test because for reasons I cannot fathom, ever since it was announced that we're making the roster changes, they are back to being a top 3 team in the world, easily, currently ranked number 2. And, they've been playing fantastic Counter-Strike, and they look really motivated to win. And remember, I don't rate Kyojin at all. I think that pickup's been a total failure. But, with the core, like Shocks has rolled back the years here. He's had some really good maps. Masood has been playing fucking really well at this tournament, even though, you know, how highly do you rate him overall? Not too sure. Ziwu seems to have his like game face on, and they're not going to have to face sort of the Spectre and Na'Vi here. I mean, the Vitality Virtus Pro match for me, this has got real potential to be one of the matches of the tournament. And Vitality, again, could find themselves in a final with a dead team, which is insane to me.
By the way, I will just say, because I'll contrast it, as I've done again, but I'm going to do it again. I will contrast this with Team Liquid, where what Team Liquid does is they go to tournaments, always goes like this, by the way. Half the games look good with a little bit of potential. Half the games look dreadful. And then afterwards, they all just make their excuses. The joke would be they probably all get the separate, it's like U2, they just get the separate fucking taxi away from the arena, don't talk to each other, then just come back for the next game. And it's like no camaraderie, because the difference in dead teams is pathetic between this team and Vitality. By the way, if you're Team Liquid, you know Vitality even have more reason to be aggrieved than you. They already know who is cut, who is being replaced, and that they're not even being replaced by other French players, and that it's ripping the team apart. Like, Team Liquid have had terrible results, are all going to themselves choose to leave and go elsewhere and make different teams. Like, I don't get this at all, because I won't make it too much about the Liquid side, but normally it's hit and misses to whether a dead team does anything. Yeah. That's at one tournament. This team is looking good every single time out of the gate, with the exception basically of that first phase of the major where they went 0-2 in the best of ones. They're looking banging. Like, true, I'll always add in, they do need Ziwu to be literally a top 3 player in the world. But guess what? Because he is an alien, you can just rely on that every tournament somehow. Yeah, so as long as that arrives, the rest of them do their job. Kyojin obviously is a fucking dead man walking, but that's the other thing about them, right? I think every tournament that they have now with this lineup just adds more to someone like Apex and Extaz's sort of resume, because the idea you're doing this with Kyojin, who you yourself know has failed and is essentially someone that if you really could just replace him, you'd pull the plug immediately, but you know you can't. You have to go to the tournament. So how they're even managing that situation, how they're playing around it, how the rest of them all perform, I think it's mad props to everyone in Vitality, basically.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is what being a professional sort of looks like.
Yes,
right?
It should be. This is a great example for younger players.
Yeah, totally. And yet, honestly, again, could go out on a high, could win the whole thing. It's definitely not beyond the realms of possibility. Not. Yeah, so just so many great games to look forward to in that competition.
Would even in some ways be like mad cool if you think about it. If they were able to win a big tournament like this, how much more hyped would everyone be when the fucking Danish players come in? Oh, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it can also have that reverse effect. What if you go to the next tournament and you shit with your new high-powered lineup? Remember, on paper, this is the lineup that me personally, I don't know if you agree, but this is the lineup a lot of people are earmarking to be the one that potentially goes up against Na'Vi and dethrones them.
It's obvious.
So, I mean, listen, there's a phrase, obviously, everybody knows, and it's been a week where people seem to think no one else understands idioms in phrases in the whole world, but whatever. And if it ain't broken, don't fix it. If they go out on a high or winning a tournament, it's sort of going to be like, why are we changing roster again? Why don't we just switch Kyojin out and bring in somebody else? But no, it's so crazy that a dead team is sort of already undermining the future move they've already made. Like,
I like that though, because here's the reason it's good, Richard, because it demands that they become the number 1 team and beat Na'Vi.
Yeah.
If this last lineup was making all these finals, top 4s, legit playoff team every time, if you then don't be even better than them, which, by the way, if you look at the lineup and the money I imagine they're paying those players in salary, that's what you should be. If you're Zonic, you're the GOAT coach, well then fucking do better than the last team. Yeah. Do better than the one with Kyojin in. You're Dupree, you're considered one of the best players ever. Mega's literally a major MVP. Like, the point is, those guys should have that fucking fire under their asses. That it really should be like, from day one, you should be good, essentially. I know that's unreasonable, but that's the stakes you're playing at, because you've made the blockbuster trade. So, yeah, that's why I'm with you. In a way, I hope they win the tournament for exactly that reason.
Right, and by the way, because obviously I do occasionally glance over at the chat, which is always a mistake. No, I'm not even triggered. There's a lot of people in the chat going, Kyojin isn't that bad. So I know. So let's just...
Who is then? That would be the obvious question. Is no one bad? It's just bad then by your logic.
Well, listen, I'll just let the HLTV rating do the heavy lifting for me on this one. So currently, he over the remember, this is a 22-year-old young player that was brought in to add firepower. Currently, he is the lowest ranked player on the team with a 0.95 rating, which, by the way, on the way they do the stats, I think that's like over the last 3 months. But here's the crucial one. When he plays versus top 5 opponents, that drops to 0.84. When he plays versus top 10 opponents, eminently beatable for a team like Vitality, he's at a 0.90. Unfortunately, guys, I'm all for developing young talent. He is just not at the level yet, and he's 22. And, Masuta, by the way, no one even says, well, he's a young prospect, playing better than Kyojin ever has in this lineup, and is 18. People seem to think like Masuta's the older of the two. No. So, unfortunately, Kyojin's professional career, he is developmentally behind because of the VAC ban. That's just how it works. And he can't hang at this level yet. He needs to go and play in a fucking double pony or someone like that. Yes. When you're playing in the Bush leagues and you're having to grind out wins against teams you've never even heard of, Myrmidoni from Romania beating you 2-0, that's where you get your sort of game intelligence and your experience. Then you can go to the next level. Right? He's not there. He's been thrown in at the deep end, and unfortunately, the lifeguards in the pool, lifting him out. So yeah, he is that bad, guys. Unfortunately, there's no fucking statistic in the world where you can frame Kyojin. Oh, but he's actually doing all right. Not even as a role player, guys. So just it's there. The numbers don't lie. Right. Anyway, let's do some news. IEM Winter, by the way, starts in 2 days. Make sure you watch it. Those semis are going to be lights out. Let's just go through. Let's talk about Team Liquid. We already mentioned them briefly there. Dead team walking. It looks like we're getting the Nitro move now. It looks like Nitro is 100% nailed on. It's just been announced. Valorant have obviously got their championships going on. Nitro left 100 Thieves. The one good thing I will say about the way 100 Thieves handle their communications about their Valorant team is it's punctual, it's professional. They put it this way. This should be the norm for every esports org, but it isn't. So here's what they've done. They've announced that he's leaving the team. They gave him a glowing review on the way out saying, thank you for helping instill a winning culture in our team. They they had media ready to go, videos and nice little templates. Just raise your game, guys, because sometimes players leave rosters and I find out on HLTV, not even your own socials. But anyway, we announced it first here that Nitro was going back to Team Liquid. It was then reported in the press that was true. And now, obviously, he's left 100 Thieves. How do you feel about Nitro coming back, Duncan?
I have mixed feelings, and the problem is the team he is going to. If he was coming back, but it was like on his own dime, it was like, right, guys, I'm coming back to CSGO. Maybe I can get in maybe I even just start off an extra salt or something, earn my way back, and then, I could play in like maybe the UEG lineup. The problem is if you're going to join Team Liquid, it's like the Vitality discussion. You are supposed to be one of the best teams in the world. By the way, the 2 players you're apparently definitely keeping, Elysia and Naf, are some of the best players in the world. They are arguably the best NA players. So if he comes into that team, I don't want to hear any bullshit like, oh, but he's just come back from Valorant. No. I didn't ever make him go to Valorant. I didn't make you sign him back to Team Liquid. I'm not accepting that as a premise. If he joins Team Liquid, especially if he joins the IGL, I expect him to be one of the best IGLs in the world. If he isn't, I don't know why you wasted your time bringing him back. And I personally hate the combo that they're bringing back Nitro if they're keeping Adren as the fucking coach. Like, this guy is a whack coach, mate. Maybe not in all regards, because certain aspects of coaching are things like looking at demos, maybe things you do, how you schedule a practice, things you work on. But in terms of some of the other aspects, here's my problem. I think both Nitro and Adren lack leadership qualities in terms of, like, first of all, the best ones are the ones you don't even have to fucking say anything and you play better for them. But also the ability to talk around issues, to motivate people. They These are two people who have both shown a deficiency in that regard. Like, as you've always said, Nitro is the glue guy. He's more the player. Typically, he's thought there's a supportive element. Like, he's the guy everyone likes, does his job. He's not trying to step on your feet. He'll accommodate you where he can. The problem is at certain points when you're the leader, like, remember that story from the Major where when there was 0-2, supposedly Apex said to ZWoo, if you don't carry us now, basically, we're going home. Now, what's funny is a lot of people are like, that's so epic. You don't realise 99% of people wouldn't say that in Counter-Strike. If you were even the player, by the way, like, how fucking dare you put that on me? I'm the best player. I don't have to do that. Loads of players would be like that. I think that's gangster that fucking Apex did that because he's right. But also, he knew that was exactly the thing he had to say to make the guy. And by the way, if people don't know, ZWoo was playing average as fuck before that. And he literally just turned it on because Apex did that. They don't have that in Team Liquid. And so my problem is, I think if I've always said this, you've got to pair the IGL and the coach so that they cover some of each other's weaknesses. And as far as I can tell, Nitro and Adren are very similar in that regard. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't hate Nitro coming back to CSGO. I think he definitely could be a tier 1 CSGO player and he can be in the mix of NA teams, etc. I just don't know if it's what Liquid needs. In fact, I would go ahead and say it probably isn't personally. And I look at the project and it's like, is this just the fucking Elige eggshell walking fucking parade? What is this? Why is everyone in the team's just an Elige yes man?
Yeah, spoiler, that's exactly that's exactly the team that's being assembled, yes. Team Liquid have decided they're going to stay in CS and not do what a lot of other orgs have done and just basically peace out while COVID's a thing and focus on Valorant. By the way, they've got a good Valorant team, they've decided we're going to do it Elige's way to keep Elige, essentially. Because for those who don't know,
that's like when someone goes, you know, that mad shit that people say, and you're just like, what? You know, when people are like, well, the reason I had the second child was to keep the marriage going. It's like, why would that be a solution?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Do that. Don't ever have a kid
the joke goes
to keep the marriage together, yeah.
Oh, we have this player called Lige. Is he good? Oh, he's one of the best players ever. All right, what's the problem? I think is his personality and his ego is sort of killing the whole vibe of the team. Oh, fill the team with just people that are yes men to him. Oh, that'll solve it. Yeah, good idea. It's the opposite, you moron. You need coaches and players who actually fucking make this guy get his shit together and stop being a little princess. But and by the way, the idea of all the people you're going to bring into a team as well that has a princess in it, you're going to literally bring shocks. Is this a meme? Is this a spitting image or something? What are you talking about? What's he going to do? Go, really? You should do that. Like I would. By the way, now I will up. Like, come on, man. I can't already see where this team's going.
I mean, so the Shock Sting hasn't been confirmed 100% yet, although the OC deal does look to be going ahead, like we said. Just a few thoughts on this, situation. Like, basically, the situation Team Liquid were in was Elige sort of said, or intimated, because, he's actually, he's a really, really smart dude. And he's never sort of directly confrontational. He's more like a passive aggressive kind of guy. So he basically sort of intimated, I can just go to Valorant and get a big fat contract, and actually sort of, was in, going to potentially do that. The only way.
But that's toxic as fuck.
Yeah, I know.
Dude, imagine that. Here's another piece of advice for you guys. Anyone who ever puts a mad ultimatum like that, which gives them all the power, you just say, see, then go. You call their bluff. Yeah, because in that scenario, if you ever say yes, you're that guy's prisoner forever now. As you see now, you're going to literally build your whole team and risk all of 2022 for this guy's ego. If someone goes to me and they go, you know what, I could just even go to Valorant, I wouldn't even let them finish the sentence, mate. I'd go, see you.
Yep.
Go, I want to have a discussion. No, why would you want to have a discussion? You can go to Valorant. You don't need me. The joke there is you obviously want to stay in CSGO, you dickhead. So why are you holding this over my head? That's exactly a perfect example of what Elige is like. He isn't like straight up toxic. He'll never tell you like, oh, you're a piece of shit and I think you're worthless and I'll never do what you say. What he does is it's just like he has a way of arguing. By the way, I know this. I'm like this, where it's like, unless you sort of check yourself every now and then, if you want to be the guy who wins every argument, by the way, spoiler, if you're smart, you can win every argument. The bad thing is you'll ruin every relationship and it wouldn't be worth it in the end. That's what you have to realize as a human sometimes. Like, some arguments aren't worth winning, I don't think he gets that, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, to try and see it from his perspective, we're talking about probably the greatest North American player.
Yeah, I would put him that straight up in that spot.
And yet, and we're talking about in not ancient history, a player that was playing in a team that was winning everything and had just dethroned one of the great
a couple of years ago.
Yep. And so I can get the frustration that you end up in a patchwork team that's dysfunctional, role overlap, people not playing well, I get the impression he didn't want
With
Grimm.
all that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, with you on that.
And so obviously, if you're one of the best players and you're playing in a roster you don't want, and you reject that, I don't want Fallen, I don't want Grimm. Why is the org making me take this? Maybe there is a time for a flex where you go, we do it my way or I'm out. And I essentially think that's kind of what's happened here. But the problem then becomes, yes, he's got all the power, but you've got to bring. You can't be Nitro. You can't, and Adrian. You can't rely on these guys that they were part of the failure. They were part of the success.
By the way, here's
but they
an
were
example.
part of the failure that came after.
I'm with you. That's the problem. I was with you right up to the point where he had some agency. As soon as he flexed his agency to get his boy fucking Adren back and shit-canned my boy Moses, who, by the way, did fuck all wrong. And then secondly, is going to bring back Nitro. It's like, I'll put it this way. Here's another angle I can take. I don't have to make it all negative. The other way I can spin it is like I said about Carlos with G2 and Nico. You can spin it the other way. Okay, Lige, we'll do all this stuff. By the way, if we don't win next year, it's your fault. You picked them. You picked them. You wanted them. I gave you them. If we don't win, it's your fault, right? That's what it. Because here's what people don't get. And I'm so sick of players in Counter-Strike not understanding this. This is the sort of argument I used to have with Device like 6 or 7 years ago, where what he would try to do was this. You know, when fans say this thing where they go, well, you know, I mean, ZywOo didn't have a bad game. He still had a 1.05 rate. Right, 1.05 is dog shit if you ask ZywOo, because you are one of the greatest players to ever play Counter-Strike. That's like saying some striker who scores 5 goals in a season is all right, because 5's a lot more than most players in a team score. Not the strikers, though, do they? A striker should probably score 15 or 20 goals in a season, depending on what style of strike he plays. So the point is, if you are a Lige, you are supposed to be one of the best players in the world, and if I give you good enough players, and in this case, you're telling me they're good enough, that's why I'm signing them, then you must be one of the best teams in the world. There's none of this shit. Go on Liquipedia now and look at the fucking Team Liquid this year, Richard. It's a fucking disgrace, mate.
No, it's outrageous.
Once Moses leaves, it's just people coming like 8th, 9th. Like a good result is like, oh, we had top 6 once. What happened? Immediately banged out. Like, it's just garbage, mate. Like, they've just pissed. And this is, by the way, this is a very legit org with real money, spending real money, including boot camps. Oh, by the way, I would say out of all the Counter-Strike teams, I think they're the best facilities in the world, mate. They actually seem, aside from the fact you have to go to Europe, like a team that's in one of the best set-up positions to succeed. So I find this whole thing, if it really does stem from...
Victor's done an amazing job with Team Liquid down the years. I mean, when you consider it could have been a recipe for disaster, because it was essentially a Dutch-based, European-based org merging with a big money, not Flash North American org, Curse, and becoming this. I mean, look, they've been great from a managerial perspective, but this team obviously has got increasingly dysfunctional. And like I say, they could find themselves very easily in that world where they're like a Cloud9, where it's like everyone plays for 3 months, and then we drop them, and then somebody else comes in, and there's no continuity in the lineup. Listen, people also seem to have forgotten that when Nitro left, he was unquestionably part of the problem in Liquid.
He was having problems.
Yeah, he was really having game problems. I want people to go and look. I've actually, I can just show you if Sam can bring it up. You can see the drop off he had from the January 2020 onwards. It was career low form. Now, obviously, there's factors for that, but at the end of the day, I don't think he's coming back a better player. I mean, that can't be real, right? Like,
so one thing they haven't done, Richard. That, like, I know they haven't announced him joining yet, but if they announce him joining, if they don't have a video where he explains these two things, why he left CS:GO and why he is now returning, this is a recipe for disaster, mate. This team, because think about it, right? If you love CS:GO, if you want, like, why would you leave in that setting? You left, by the way, with the intention, let's be real, to never play CS:GO again. You left to have your career now in Valorant. So the fact that you're coming back, listen, I'm not claiming like I know all the reasons. Like, maybe he has a great reason, but it'd have to sound really great, because I'd have to feel like, because at the moment my vibe goes the other way, Richard. I don't think he's coming back to CS:GO because he loves CS:GO. I think he's just realised, guess what? Grass wasn't greener and Valorant's semi-shit show. So I'm coming back to CS:GO.
For me, right, because I've obviously talked to him a good few times. For me, he's not the kind of cat who's financially motivated at all. He doesn't really.
No, I mean, I think like a lot of them. I've told you, nearly all the people I know who are real CS:GO pros, except for the ones who had nowhere else to go, they all tell me they don't like Valorant as much. They complain half the time, Richard, about how shit the agents are, then how this one's OP, and how Riot doesn't know how to make maps, and the fucking servers suck, and then they ruin their lands. Like, if people didn't know, the reason we did that Four Horsemen episode is because essentially you're never going to hear complaints from Valorant pros like you do CS:GO pros. Because if you do it, Riot goes up your fucking arse. That's real. They've essentially suppressed the whole scene of talent, pros, like everyone. They're all suppressed. So don't think, oh, there's no complaints, it must be all right. No, the fact there are no complaints tells you it is fucked. Because these are guys who complained all the time in CS:GO. So unfortunately, I get the vibe most of them, they just don't like Valorant that much, mate.
I think as well, though, we're like Nick, you know, whenever I've seen him, like he's the guy you want at a LAN, right? We talk about why LANs are different from online. Obviously, like I say, you know, people get grouchy, hotel sucks, you know, you're away from home, you know, you're not getting sleep, you got to play, you might have a shitty game, people might have a temper tantrum with each other. Like Nick was always the guy that would just smooth all that out at an event. Like he's very, very wise beyond his years. Got a great, you know, method of communication. But the one motivating factor for him, I think, is like when he left, I think he just wanted to get away. It was the equivalent of like me fucking off to a log cabin, basically. That's what he did when he went to Valorant. Yeah, it was probably a big money move. Yeah, it was probably high profile. But I think he was mega disappointed with where Liquid had ended up. And honestly, based on things he kind of said publicly, there was always this sort of inference, or at least that's what I was seeing it between the lines in interviews he did, that he felt responsible. He felt he'd let them down, but he also knew he could stay in Liquid forever. He's got Elijah on his side. Obviously, he doesn't have to go anywhere, but he wanted to get away. He wanted to get out of that relationship because he actually thought he was bringing it down. So in that sense, I sort of commend it. I don't think he was a guy who jumped into 100 Thieves just to get the bag and then, you know, was playing in a game he acknowledged was sort of inferior to CS. I think he wanted to make a fresh start for himself, and now obviously that it's sort of the wheels have come off and he's seen the problems in Team Liquid, he probably thinks I can go there and I can make that team great again with my friends. That for him is the motivator. I genuinely believe that, knowing the guy. So will it happen? I don't think so. I think it's like one of those things, you know, that saying you can never go back. You know, I don't think they can ever get back to where they are, even with this lineup. But I think they're getting a phenomenal leader of men, like the concept you talked about. I just don't think they're going to get a very good player with him, and I don't think there's any. I think if Liquid want to be back to winning ways, I don't think there's anywhere to hide on the server. I mean, we already are hoping, by the way, that Shox is going to be good if it's him who joins. We're already hoping, is OC ready for to farm tier 1 like he's been farming tier 2? There's so many variables, and I just think, unfortunately, I don't get a great sense this is going to be a good project, and it probably will be Nitro's swan song, ultimately. So those are my thoughts on that. Other news, we've obviously had Kassad is available. He's left the Extremum project, something I never thought would happen. Now, obviously, Kassad's had a bit of a choppy, you know, up and down kind of, you know, career of late, because he was at the Cloud9 team and then left very abruptly under circumstances we still don't know the full details of, despite interviews with people from around that team. The general vibe seems to be him and Alex didn't share philosophies or whatever. Probably something that could have been figured out before he was hired, if we're just being honest about it.
I'd say, though, what a genius, because he genuinely did just jump off the train before it went off the edge of the cliff. No one even remembers. No one actually blames him for the Cloud9 thing. Yeah. It's only if you're in Cloud9 at the end you're fucked. Those are the ones you don't want to be.
You can kill me, but 2 will take my place. He's just off filming the thing. Perfect. Yeah, he got out at the right time. And listen, I think as well, what's interesting is because Extremum have been like, you know, sort of just not quite at the top tier tournaments. Like
he's very visible, were they?
Yeah, exactly. So it's been an okay place for him. Sort of like lack success, if you want. So his last 2 appointments have been a little bit dubious, but I agree with you. I saw your tweet the other day. I think Kassad is like if your philosophy meshes with his and you can get along and understand, he's from a authoritarian school of coaching. He wants the power an X has or a Zonic has. And if he doesn't get that, he can't work with the project. He needs to be able to tell you, you're doing this the fucking wrong way, so change it. He wants to be the Gordon Ramsay of CS coaching. And if you can vibe with that, and by the way, you should, because he's got a fantastic mind for the game, which he's proven consistently with his analysis segments, by the way, on these ESL broadcasts he's been doing. I think he's a tremendous pickup, but it comes with that caveat for me. He couldn't go and coach in a league, for example.
No, but the thing is, though, the joke is someone like Elige doesn't know that is exactly who he needs. That is literally who he needs as his coach. By the way, same for all these teams. If you want a team, G2's a great example. Fuck it, as long as they won't speak English, throw everyone in the mix. Fucking Nape. All these teams could use a guy like this. I think he would improve all these squads.
Oh, for sure. People have said when this came up that he was like overrated because he had that like kind of purple patch with Renegades, and and he got to coach Nico Sports, the sort of mouse sports with Nico in and all of that. For me though, I think that's like really reductive. I think like when he was at Renegades, he took them to being an international team. He left. Then when he went back and they were like 100 Thieves, they were winning tournaments at the end.
They didn't win, but they were like in the finals.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, getting close to winning tournaments at the end. And so I think he's proven himself totally as an elite level coach.
It's the opposite. What's great about whatever fan said that is that's like going, I don't even think that Alex Ferguson's that good. Like, look what he did with Manchester United. It's like, well, that would be the one thing I would give to show why he's the best. They've done that. Like, so what you're saying is all he did, Richard, is just coach Nico Sports, a team with one good player, to top 4 at an E-League $1 million tournament. And then what did he even do after that? Just take like a bunch of Australian and New Zealand players, 0 foreigners except Jacob from Norway. What did he do? Take them to the playoffs of 2 majors and the semis of one, and then become like a top 5 team in the world? Do something else. If you phrase it like this, he took fucking Spiddy and Dennis to top 4 in a $1 million tournament. Then he took Gratisfaction to finals of not major, but like big ESL lands. Like, what more do you want him to do? Give you a blowjob and win the tournament at the same time? Like, people's expectations are fucking sick. Like, what I don't get is there's no relative like judging of it, is it? Like, they act like he's supposed to win all of like the majors that Zonic did. Spoiler, did you enjoy Zonic this year? How many championships did Zonic win this year, everyone? By the way, he had 4 of the players that he won all his majors with. What was he waiting for? It's almost like coach isn't fucking playing the game. All you can do is try and get the best out of your pieces. And of all the people, here's the difference. I don't say Kassad's the best because he never had one of the best teams. He never won the championships. But you just look at what he did with the teams he did have, and he pretty much, with the exclusion of Extremum, always overperformed.
Well, and look, I'll also add this. At a time where, because of the cheating scandal, we're never going to get back to an era where coaches can be in constant communication with players. When I'm in the trenches of a LAN, and I need pep talks between games, I need, people motivating me around me, I need to feel like we can win a tournament, I need belief. Kassad's your man for this. He's tailor-made for an era where the coach might not have direct input in the game as it's happening, but can fucking motivate you outside of the server. So I think his value's increased. I think he's one of the few coaches whose value goes up with the decisions Valve have made. So I hope he gets picked up. He's a fucking straight fire legend as well, by the way. He's an absolute fucking G. But I hope Kassad gets a good team. And now's the time, a chance to prove. Like, there's got to be, right? If Emmy was in the G2 talks,
I know, give me a break.
Like Kassad and Nico hooking up again at G2 with Carlos behind him and a legitimate will to win. That could be straight fucking fire for me. Absolutely.
Dude, this is how whack CSGO's become, especially in the online era. I told you how I had a shortlist when I was at Flashpoint, and it was like fucking Zeus, Kassad, Yanko. I think it was even in that order. And I said to all these Flashpoint teams, all these people can be either your GM or your coach. And what I got back was I think one team inquired about one of them, and that's about it. It's even worse for the whole scene, though. Think about some of the people who are coaches right now in CSGO. Keita, let's keep going on this, Ave, Fuck, I'll keep going. Let me think of other people who are on other team. Whoever's on OG now, I don't even know if there is anyone on OG at the moment. Fuck it, Rugger, I assume, was out of the mix.
Casper's still coaching over there.
Right, these people, I'm just going to say it. I can't know because no one knows what a coach does. But in the game where we infer and we look at what they did with the pizza, Kassad's better than these people. Zeus is better than these people. Like, how are these guys not getting the best offers? I get it if they say, I just don't want to take an offer and I'm going to leave the game. That'd be one thing. These guys, no one rings their phone. No one knocks on the door. I've had to get half of these guys to fucking get. It's mental. I don't get it. Everyone else, either I'm totally wrong, could be the case, or everyone else just has no fucking eye test for the game. Like, again, Adren's getting called out of a log cabin when he's been doing nothing to come and coach again. Like, please, Adren, can we pay you 20k a month to never do anything or call a timeout? And Kassad just can't buy a fucking gig.
This is how you know it's absolutely fucked. Imagine a world where we have to signal boost people like Zeus and Kassad being available.
I'll even throw another one in there. Here's another detail that if you know his history, makes it mental this guy doesn't get picked up. Just like Zeus, he has shown a willingness to move to another fucking continent, live there, never complain once, and put up with any conditions in order to try and win. We're in a world right now where people get paid megabucks and complain they have to go to Europe for whatever. Like, this guy's even sure he could be in any team in the world. He's got a winner's mindset. I think he even said, if people don't know, in my reflections with him, he said when he went to the Renegades team, he literally just had to end his relationship with his significant other because he knew he'd just be away for years. He had to just basically go, look, it's not even due to you, but I'm sorry, I have to go to America and follow my dream. Bye. Only you would be doing the opposite, going, oh, but a guy has a kid, you can't expect him to play good Counter-Strike. Well, he can't move continent store, and he's got a wife. This guy's such a winner, because that's where he comes from. He comes from one of those backgrounds where we'd have never heard of him if he wasn't, that he just is willing to do anything. So, like, again, how do people in the industry not know? Like, notice I'm not talking about anything inside the server. These are character-defining qualities. Like, this is this kind of person you want in your org as your coach. Fix up, you fucking dog shit orgs out there. Complexity and people like that. Fuck out of my face. You're going to hire Peacemaker for 3 months and just fire him. Like, hire the best people in the world, you shithead, then you don't have to fire him.
Yeah. And it can work through any project, right? So we did say we were going to talk about it. Fitting, I think that the last piece of news we'll tackle is The Last Dance, as it keeps being called. By the way, that premise utterly destroyed because...
Yeah.
Well, it's not even the lineup.
Exactly. There's two details. One, it isn't a Last Dance. This is with new partners, you fucking moron. And then number two, let's think, what was The Last Dance? Well, it was basically a documentary about Michael Jordan's Bulls. And what happened, guys, was, this is the detail they always fucking miss. They didn't play 10 years and be shit and then just keep the team together. They just won the last 2 championships. They just said, shall we see if there's one more championship in the tank? These guys haven't won since 2016 for majors, 2017 for real tournaments. And also, here's the analogy. Imagine if they said, let's bring the team back for 1998, but minus Michael Jordan.
I know.
Not even Coldzera in the team. He was the best player in the world. The whole premise doesn't work. The whole premise is a failure.
I know.
It's like Stephen Hawking's Last Dance. I don't even know what that means. It's edgy, but I don't even know what it means. He wasn't even, I know exactly. It doesn't even mean anything. It sounded good in the moment, though. Whatever. It sounded funny. Whatever. Whatever. You get the premise. Whatever. I don't know. I don't even really know what that means myself. I know.
Yeah, I know. It's all right, mate. It's still not as good as when you fucking just randomly called Joe Biden a Viagra addict. So, you know, at the end of the day, your free association is so fucked up, I'll never understand it, mate. But anyway, so this was the report in draft5.gg that they've now confirmed that the Last Dance lineup will not include Coldzera. Coldzera himself said, you're all out of your mind if you think I would go and do that. But anyway, so the lineup now is obviously Fallen. It's Fur. They brought in Bolts sort of as a replacement for Coldzera. FNX is back.
They're so shameless in this team, aren't they? You can just imagine that someone like Fallen probably just walk in the room and not even feel like it's awkward. Just go, hey, how you doing, Bolts? Hey, what's up? Are you for real? I've been in the fucking desert for 3 years. You did that to me, motherfucker. They're so cooked, aren't they? They're so fucking stupid in the Brazilian teams, mental.
And then Vinny is now the last name. If you remember, speculation that he was.
Stance, we got the worst player from Furia. Oh, sick. Yeah, give you a break.
I mean, I will say with Vinny, to be fair, he was a role player in that.
But he's just all right, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's just all right.
I wouldn't say he was amazing in that role, but put it on this roster, mate, he's going to look for him.
He's the best, isn't he?
There is no way on God's green earth that FNX is going to somehow roll back the years and be the player he used to be when he's literally just been out there living his fucking movie for like 5 years. Is it 5 years? It is. It's 5.
Yeah, he was kicked at the end of 2016.
Yeah.
It's mental, isn't it?
How?
So if you remember, people forget this detail as well, Richard. Everyone acts like he just left SK and he just lost. No. He went to Immortals, was a big signing, played for a few months, benched even in Immortals, by the way. Then people forget. What are you talking about, Thorne? No, when they made the major final, he wasn't in the fucking team, you idiots. He was benched. The joke is, he hasn't been active in a real sense since 2017. Like, he's been in teams, but the problem there is you have to basically explain he was essentially sort of like an influencer player in those teams. Like, basically, as far as I can tell, he just kept his foot in the door and it was in no way relevant, but they probably paid him to be like an ambassador or some shite, didn't they?
Yeah, well, if I remember rightly, was he the guy that
from IBR as well? He's the one who said it would fail.
Yeah. I was going to say he was the one who said it. Like they uncovered that tweet. Yeah, where he said like this will just bring shame to a once great name. By the way, fully fucking vindicated on that one. FNX won that one. Turns out, by the way, this guy is just he is a legend. Like, fair, you gotta love him. Fair enough. But like, I'll say this:
you should just take that quote he said about MIBR and replace MIBR with his name and go. FNX is about to ruin what was a great name. Yeah, you've nailed it again. FNX from the past.
Yeah, it's past FNX. But anyway, like I just think this lineup is just doomed. I think it's just doomed to fail. I think this is a bad idea. Certainly, I'm sad for Vinny that he's got to go and be associated with it, because at least you get dropped from Furia, right? Furia, you've been an integral part. I think he was at Furia, for 4 years.
Ages.
Yeah, over 4 years. You've been an integral part of an emergent team that actually did some legitimately really cool shit. You're always going to have that on your resume as soon as you attach yourself to a project like this. Like, by the way, Bolts is washed. FNX is beyond washed. By the way, self-imposed washed. Because he just doesn't, he understands that for him, there are better things in life. And Fallen, by the way, as I said, please, bro, stop. Don't tarnish your legacy, man.
No, you won't, Richard. No, I know why. I know exactly why. Because I tell you what, if you only look at the business angle, it's really smart to keep playing. You know how many pro players I know who got like merch line stuff, but the problem is they did it either at the end of their career or like 1 year or 2 years after they'd retire. And the worst thing is, basically, what you lose is if you are still an active player who's going to tier 1 lands, you have the most ridiculous like symbiotic effect between being a famous player, which keeps your stock up, and then having a product which you then have eyeballs on because of your exposure. It's one of the reasons why for many years a lot of fans don't get this. When I would tell them I was literally turning down events, like fucking big events like DreamHack Masters or whatever, one of the reasons why is I didn't want to go to so many lands, but I knew I had to still go to a few because it helps in the same fashion for me, as I am an event and I'm a big relevant person. I have video, like the whole thing is interconnected. It all helps each other. So unfortunately, from a business side, it's genius to keep playing and extend it as long as possible. By the way, even just as a pure marketing tool, this lineup obviously could have great success. The problem is, as you're saying, like you are just making a mockery of who you were as a player. And people, after it's been this many years, I'm just saying it, there are not that many fans who were around in 2017, mate. People are going to think very lowly of Fallen at the end of his career. They're going to think we exaggerated how good he was or something. Or he was just like a fucking streaky player.
So is the danger, right? And that's why it's like, listen, sometimes it's just better to just, be like Taz. Just be like Taz. Miss you, legend. Be like Taz, right? I'll tell you what I mean by that. Like, you haven't heard from what Taz is doing, right? You haven't heard, have you? He's not been attaching himself to like high profile check stealing, projects, has he? Right? Like he's just been out there just doing what he does over at Honoris
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just there playing. He's 35 years old. He's still going. You never hear him pipe up about it. He's never saying how great. You know what I mean? Be like those guys. Literally, like end your career by passing the torch to the youth, by playing in a team that's commensurate to where your ability's at right now. a high-profile flop like Liquid into a high-profile flop like Team Last Dance. By the way, please tell me you guys have an organization. Please don't 0-0 Nation yourselves. Please tell me you have an org lined up for this. And by the way, whoever it would be, I'd dread to think, because it ain't a top org, right? But anyway, you're falling, mate. You're one of the fucking greats. I don't want to see this. I can't look. It's a fucking car crash. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I don't know, mate. Whatever. That team is fucked. If he wins a single tournament with that team, he is the greatest.
They're not winning anything, mate. Come on.
I know. I'm not mental today. Right, anyway, there you go. That's all of the news. You've had your news. Now we have to move on to viewer questions. Obviously, if you give us $50, we'll do a little dance for you, because we're just shameless, money-hungry scum. First question, Detlef Insomniac says, after the rip-roaring success of esports Monopoly, do you think ESL will expand their tabletop game lineup with such classics as Name Your Esports Event Scrabble or NACS Jenga? Not bad.
They could also maybe replicate that amazing game, like Who Are You, but just with their talent that they hire for events. Love you, Dinko. Whatever. That's just listen. Everyone catches a stray from time to time.
I know. No, listen.
A positive is let's mention your name on a show.
Yeah,
much like ESL. There you go. So.
Do you remember? Did you ever see that clip, by the way, where Parler got Hawker and Dinko mixed up?
Really? Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I've never seen this one.
Yeah, I'll send it to you after the show. It's absolutely because they're all absolutely creased because he keeps saying the name.
Oh, why?
And no one corrects him.
At that point, listen, you definitely shouldn't. You should let that motherfucker just squirm. Just not know he's wrecking himself.
It's mega awkward. I'll have to find the clip and show it to you. You'll fucking love it, mate. Anyway, next question. First sock. Is the major metric, i.e. defining greatness in eras based on the amount of majors a team wins, broken after having moved from 3 majors to 2 majors a year and now only having had 1 over the last 2 years? This is definitely a listen, first question.
I've done a video similar to this where I say, like, obviously you can't treat all the majors equally as a result. Yeah, I would say yes, because first of all, as you say, there are only 2 in the old metric. We don't even know if we're going to get 1 a year at the moment. Probably, if I had to guess, I think it'll be 1 a year for the next few years. I think it's just more likely if you look at logistics and then all the fact that, remember, it's not just about whether you can hold the event. What if you could hold the event but only half the countries are open or can travel, for example? So realistically, essentially, the whole world has to sort of be reasonable for it to actually happen. So in that world, I do think that you can't just use them as strictly as people did before. When people were playing 3 majors a year, yes, if you're the greatest team with the greatest players and you don't win any majors, there's something suspect about that. Like, you have to ask questions. That's why people will ask questions about FaZe Clan, Team Liquid. I mean, I know they weren't in the 3 major era, but that's why you ask the questions. I think in the modern day, and especially with all the online tournaments, I don't think it's as big a deal. In some ways, as a tournament, it's far and away the biggest tournament. So in a counterintuitive sense, it's actually the biggest thing in the world. But I actually don't think you have to win it to like be the greatest player or whatever. I said this about Simple before I even won it. Like, he would have still been the GOAT for me if he hadn't won it.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's why I'm grateful that Intel are in the scene, because the Grand Slam sort of gives you another metric.
Yes. I think that's a good one too.
Yeah, well, I mean, because obviously with that, it's harder to win than a major. A major is like one miracle run, right? And this is why when we talk about eras, it's do you win the next major? Do you win the major after that? How far do you go in that major? How long was your peak? How long did it last? That's essentially the metric. And the Intel Extreme Masters Grand Slam, what you get with that is you get 5 tournaments, and it's like you have to be excellent consistently over a year. It's what we should have. It's what Valve should have done.
Yes.
Frankly, a consistent narrative that gives tournaments meaning and ties together an entire year. We don't have that. Dota's got the DPC, which has its flaws, sure, but I'd rather we had something like that in CS than what we got. So for me, I think now, because there's less majors, you can't make it all about majors, but in a functional scene, the majors would be happening at like key landmarks over a season. So you would have a bunch of tournaments like a Grand Slam running right up to a major. And then if a team takes the Grand Slam and the major, well, obviously you're talking about an era. Obviously you're talking about greats. But right now it's a little bit disjointed. And by the way, the online era don't mean shit.
No.
The online era don't mean shit. you'll notice we never talked about a Gambit era when they were winning everything online, and we never talked about an RV era either when they overtook them. Now that lands are back, now we can see if it's an RV era. But back then, we never did that. We want traffic in that. It cheapens our entire history to do it. So, yeah, it's a little bit busted right now, but I think between the Grand Slam and the one or two majors we will get a year, you can assess whether or not a team has been dynastic, let's say. A question from Atarian. I need the advice of the foremost experts in beating up animals, and Steve Irwin isn't returning my calls. So don't make me sad. Don't make me sad. For the past 2 years, I've worked as a bridge inspector in the great state of Florida. Bridges have a tendency to go over water, and motherfucking alligators live in that water. I have to go into that water to make sure the bridges don't fall down. I have had 4 times more encounters with alligators in the last 2 years than the old man ready to retire who's been doing this for 30 plus years. So my question to you and Sam is, how do I cope with gators up in my shit? Sam, I'll start with you.
Well, gators, from my research and knowledge, gators are pretty slow moving. So all you got to watch out for is they don't get within strike range.
But in a straight line.
But only within strike range. That which is like, say, a meter and a half.
Does that mean
2 meters.
if you go zigzag, that's how you get away from it? Or something?
Yeah.
That's
a gator would chase you.
Right, okay.
A gator will just like try to creep up slowly, and as soon as it's in range, it'll try and lunge it out. But if you can dodge that lunge, that's the
to be fair, that makes actually a lot of sense, because I don't know if people have ever seen, but famously, sometimes when you see a crocodile or an alligator, sometimes they sneak up and they're about to get to like the wildebeest, but if it just gets out of the water, they just give up.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even like, because you think they're going to chase after them, but they don't do it. That makes sense. Yeah.
I actually posted, I posted a link. I'm trying to fucking find it now because it would just prove this point. But basically, it was I don't know if one of the mods can grab it, maybe. But basically, it was a guy feeding an alligator, right? And he was smacking a slab of meat on the water. This thing is fucking huge. It is like a fucking dinosaur. Like, it's fucking mental. And so, listen, it was so quick out of the water, and he was running backwards. If he fell, he's dead. It's just gonna eat him, you know. So, it's no.
I've just thought one of the shittest jokes. I just say something like, just sprinkle some Kool-Aid into the water, you know, give him Gatorades. I don't give a fuck. I just don't give a fuck. Just give him Gatorades. I don't know why. I don't know how my brain comes up with this stuff. I don't.
Yeah, I do worry about it. I have to worry about it, Doug. In fact, I do nothing but worry about it in 3-hour chunks. Anyway, no. Apparently, though, they have so many nerve endings in their snout. This is a legitimate thing.
Oh, okay.
You like karate chop them on their nose. They really don't fucking
it's like a shark thing. You punch it in the nose.
Yeah. Well, they say that. Try and punch a shark in the eye or on its snout. So, for me, I almost feel like you've got to be a bit aggressive with them and sort of like alpha them. I saw another video one time. I don't know why I'm watching crocodile videos and shit. It was like some Australian woodsmen. They were like, they work on chopping down all the rotting wood along the banks of a river. And obviously there's just fucking alligators and crocs and all that everywhere, right? And basically one crocodile is just coming up and hissing at them, like, and he's just going, "Fuck off, mate." He's got his back turned to me. He's like, "Fuck off, you fucking mug." Like, I don't know why he's a Cockney all of a sudden. But he's not. He doesn't give a fuck. And it's hissing at him, and it's like rearing up like it's about to strike, and he's just saying, "You're not having me, mate. Fuck off." Like, it's like that scene with fucking Ross Kemp on
I know what you're on about. You're going to kill me. You're going to kill me.
Yeah.
You're going to fucking kill me. I'm fucking slag. The whole thing is so disturbing, isn't it? I know. What even is this?
With his pupils wide off the beetle nut as well. No one's killing me. Like, he just fucking.
Thing is, though, I would love it if someone just did a mashup of that, and then that clip of Ricky Gervais in the office going, "Ooh, you're hard."
Yeah, I'm sure
that's the thing I couldn't take seriously. Even though, by the way, in the video he is like displaying like whatever, Sigma grind set, mad alpha energy. He is doing that in the video, right? But the problem is, if you're like outraged, like me and Richard, you're just like, isn't that shithead off EastEnders? Like, you just don't know at all, do you? Like, you are aware, Afghani guys. If you just again point that gun at him, he will actually have to back down. Like, he's not actually he's not Superman or something, Fucking hell.
You're definitely holding all the cards in that one.
Yeah, you put the gun down. Just he said, you're going to kill me. Yeah, I was thinking of it. Oh, but my bad. Like, cameraman, like, he's not real, is it? It's a fucking TV show. It is a great clip, though. I can't lie.
It's a hell of a clip. No one's killing me.
Exactly.
Love it. Might get a chance to use it myself. See if it works one day in esports. Last question, Carve. It's the Carve question. So we all know the role By the Numbers has played over the years, bringing several conspiracy theories to light. I'm sure you've all heard about Copenhagen syndrome, a condition that literally that affects literally several Danish players a year, causing them to swallow bullshit from their captors. And who could forget Einstein's theory of relativity, which was is that relatively? Einstein's, I'm butchering this question, Carve, mate, but Einstein's theory of relativity, which was exposed by Thorin, is going even beyond the world of physics. Terrifying stuff indeed. But have either of you looked into the recent shenanigans that caused several ESL partner teams, employees and affiliates to temporarily lose their logins to social media for a couple of weeks after the talent announcement for IEM Winter was in fact revealed to be a monochromatic sausage fest? That's a way of putting it.
What he's referring to, if people don't get it, is obviously the second the major was announced. And remember, one of the conspiracy theories was, it's weird how NIP, Swedish company, involved with, MTG owns ESL, Swedish company. It's weird how they had almost like they were simultaneously pretending to be helping PGL, but also the primary motivators of all ill will towards the PGL, rather, over the major happening potentially in Romania. So the question is, if you remember, the Jonas Gunnarsson guy, the COO or whatever of NIP, obviously instantly came out when the talent announcement was like, right, there only one non-white male, which, by the way, already sounded stupid.
Which, by the way, was also a massive fucking lie. It will, right? But yeah, I'll finish the question. There's a bit more to it, and then we'll do the premise. We'll do the bit. It's very sad to see these voices being silenced, given they were so prominent in bringing PGL's major talent hiring practices to suffer the slings and arrows of public scrutiny. Come on, esports, it's 2021. We can do a lot better than this. So, listen, here's the thing. Obviously, rank hypocrisy because it was actual employees at ESL, not just NIP, by the way. There were employees at ESL that were like, where are all the women? Why are you not hiring women? As if, by the way, there was some sort of deliberate contrivance on our part, but spoiler, we're not involved in the hiring process, despite all the promises to the contrary. So it makes an absolute mockery of the old boys club situation. But
we were actively ignored, so it's the opposite, even, Richard.
Yes, very, very actively ignored. Yeah, expelled from the old boys.
That would be like if you were in the old boys club, you're like, well, could you just make this move? And they're like, right, grandpa, off to bed. Like, we didn't even get into shit old boys club there, didn't it? It didn't even work.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, the reality is once an ESL employee goes public and says, why have you not hired a woman for this event? And then you announce a talent announcement with no woman hired for the event. You need, again, like I just said it for the previous question, it's principles or it's shut the fuck up. You have to go against your own company because they clearly must be involved in the hiring, the same discriminatory hiring process you just accused a competitor of. What's that? Crickets, no noise. Actually, you should be more vocal about the company you work for than a competitor. Why? Because they represent you. You represent them. Their values should be your values. If they do a terrible thing, you have to stand with them and defend that, right? So there's that. And also, it is the thing you can change. You can't change what a competitor does. You can change the culture at your business, though. So why aren't you doing it? I'll tell you why, because it's never about principles. ESL, unfortunately, are so cynical that they will, by the way, any company I run, if my fucking workers are out there impugning competitors in a very unprofessional way, they're probably getting a strongly worded email in the morning about, maybe that's unprofessional behavior. But apparently it was all fair game to just pile on PGL if you work for a NIP. By the way, an org that was in attendance at the same major. Why not take a protest if you feel that strongly about it? And second of all, do not support a single woman's esports team or player. You can't make this shit up.
I think they only even have one woman in their entire org, as far as I can tell from that page that they have that lists all the employees. I think there's one woman who works there.
It's absolutely insane. If you want to make a contribution to women's esports, please, it's more than welcome. Me and Duncan have done various things ourselves down the years. Be the change you want. But if you feel strongly about something, It can't just be when one company does it, it's bad. When the other company does it, that's actually okay, and we'll give them a pass. You're just heading into red and blue American politics territory then, which is complete fucking bullshit. Principles or nothing. So thank you, Carv. That was indeed a great question to end on. A long one, but it's all right, mate. You've earned your right to a word count. So that's it. That's the show. Let's wrap it up. I didn't do a sponsor read at the start. I'll do it now. Obviously, shout out to NordVPN, our VPN sponsor. If you want to get 74% off a VPN, you just go to nordvpn.com/RLS. You just follow that link. It'll all go through for you. There's different packages you can select. It's a VPN that's super easy to use. 1-2 clicks, doesn't store your data. So have at it. And obviously, of course, our peripheral sponsor, SteelSeries. It's Christmas. You might want to get some gifts. You can go to the SteelSeries store, which you can do directly now by typing !SteelSeries in the chat. You type in my name, Richard Lewis, all one word, no space. 10% off anything in the store. So get yourself a gift. Get someone you care about a gift. Go and support them because they support us. And, of course, our patrons that also support us. Our $100 patrons, Benakagi, Carv, Cathal, J-Dubs, Jerky's Minion, Kurza Edits, new one there, Marcus Kyumpar, Michael, Tobias Bernasconi, and Will the Weed Wrangler, and our $50 patrons, Adam Ox, Alex C, A-Rammer, Bacon, Can of Pasito, Chronic Alcoholic, T-Mac 1991, Dancer Master, Echo, Fursock, Gerhan Kaya, John P, Judas, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Otarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Sard Sawar, Shine, The Bear, Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Tim Frost, Lonnie, Watch Doge, Zumba, and Zarathenia. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you on the next episode sometime next week. Until then, take care.